Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hi, welcome to the program. It's Tuesday. It's December 6th. That's well, I don't know. We've practically reached the end of the year here. We're getting pretty close. And so I guess we're nearing that window. It used to be that the games that were coming out in December were like, well, I guess maybe actually it's still true in some ways. Like I say, the games coming out in December come out extremely hot. They're like, oh man, we just had to eke this in before the end of the year and figure all of that stuff out. Oh geez, we missed Black Friday, but we're still gonna make it out in December. Like some scorching hot games sometimes coming out around that time. And I guess last week was no different, but we'll talk about the Callisto Protocol a little bit later. We've got a tree up and we haven't decorated it yet, and there's just I don't know, everything's just happening all at once. It's just been a crazy time here. We had a couple of kids staying with us for a day last week, and that's, I'm still like ruminating on that a little bit, because it was fascinating to talk about video games with and internet stuff with a 6 and a 9-year-old and kind of get their perspective on the whole thing. Where like they seemed like they knew what Minecraft was, they were aware of Roblox but had not played it. And all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and it's just crazy. I think they are trying to come back over and play some more games. That has not happened. Yet. And I don't know. Well, but I suspect we haven't seen the last of those guys. And then the rest of it is my daughter, I forgot to write a game down here. I'm going to write it down here, but we'll actually probably talk about it mostly right now. I was checking. So I spent a lot of the last week, or mostly over the weekend here, checking out some of the new releases and stuff that I just hadn't gotten around to, and one of those was Goat Simulator, which has been out for a little bit, but I just completely missed that it was released. I think you can maybe chalk it up to it being an Epic exclusive or something like that, but it's like I received zero information through any Twitter, any kind of social media, anything. Nothing hit my eyeballs saying like, hey, did you know the Goat Simulator was out? Until after it had already been out for a few days. And so I was like, oh gosh, yeah, right, that thing, huh? And so I was checking that out a little bit yesterday and Sunday. And I find it to be really aimless. I mean, it does have goals, but it is very much a like, look at the physics and wacky times simulator and all that sort of stuff. And my daughter saw me playing it, and she was like, "Can I have a go?" I don't know where she picked up the "Can I have a go," but that has become her phrase. That has become her phrase lately when she wants to play a game, when she wants to do something. And I was like, well, okay, all right, here give this a shot, I guess. And she's not really, a dual joystick. She's not really up on modern controllers and all that sort of stuff. She plays a fair amount of Mario Kart on the GBA. We've been playing some of that, and with the Mister, I can turn on enough cheats to make it like auto drive and all this other stuff, and so she can kind of just watch and still get something out of it, because she'll just get stuck on a wall and just bump into it over and over again. She doesn't know how to get into reverse or anything like that. But she did this twice, once with Midnight Suns and once with Goat Simulator, and it ended up basically the same. They're basically the same game. Midnight Suns got to a point where you finally get to walk around after you get through the tutorial, and through the tutorial you make some whirlwinds with Doctor Strange, and she was really she was almost in tears when I could not make another whirlwind appear for her. But then she really wanted to walk around, and the game, I was like, it's not really a walking around game right now. And it finally got to a point where you create the character and then you can walk around and all this stuff. And then at that point I let her walk around for a long time and all that sort of stuff. For Goat Simulator was pretty much the same, where she just wanted to walk around, but like stuff kept popping off because it's Goat Simulator. And so it's like you're bumping into people as you're walking around. Your things are accidentally catching on fire, all this other stuff. And so she did a lot more in Goat Simulator, but I don't know that she had any more or less fun with Midnight Suns than she did with Goat Simulator. Except that she needed me to get her out of the water. She would get stuck in the water, and she walked all over. Like there's that game has like different zones and a big big map and all this other stuff, and only the bottom of the map is filled in. She'd walked all the way to the other end of the landmass and was just like fucking around up there. And it doesn't fill in the map as you go, which is weird. Goat Simulator is a weird thing. I don't think it's fine, I guess. It's the sort of thing that you play and go like, yes, the joke is, yeah, you made one of these before. And this one is expanded, right? I mean, it's bigger in scope and size and all this other stuff. And it's a big old physics sandbox, and you can do a bunch of dumb stuff. And because I ended up playing it for myself a bunch last night, and I was like, this is just not, like, it opens with a bunch of Skyrim jokes, but they're written so ham-fistedly that they're really leaning into the whole, like, because this is a video game, I've got to read you the tutorial, and I'm a very long-winded character, aren't I? I'm surprised you haven't skipped yet, and all this sort of stuff at the opening that I'm just like, ugh. It was a bit much in terms of just like, yes, no, I understand the joke. Now you're going to keep laying it in. Okay, all right, continue to yes, continue down this line. Okay, yes, we have a castle we go to for upgrades. All right, yeah, I guess, I don't know. And then you're just kind of out there running around, bumping into stuff, and it's what they do is they'll have like an area on the map that's just like, here you need to build a car. And you're like, okay, you going to point out any of the car parts? And I ran around for a while before realizing, like, oh, it just wants me to throw some shit on the chassis of a car, including like a couch or a porta potty and some of this other stuff. And then once I've slapped enough parts onto this thing by just bumping them up there, it just goes, all right, that's a car, you win. And you're like, oh, okay. All right, great. We got it done. Yeah, I don't know. We've had a lot of physicsy fun in video games over the last 20 years, ever since Half-Life 2, really. Yeah, I don't know. Goat Simulator feels like they tried to wrap that into a game, but like at that point, I just want the full sandbox and all this other stuff. Like really, I should just be fucking around with Gary's mod or something at this point. Or something along those lines. I don't know. It was like simultaneously too much and not enough in different ways. But my daughter liked walking around, and then eventually was just like, okay, I'm done, and then ran away. So that's our take on Goat Simulator 3 around these parts. Is like we both found it to be short-lived fun, I guess. And yeah, no, but it's been fascinating watching her play video games. I'm trying to not let her just play video games, but it was raining, and so she was kind of cooped up inside, and we couldn't really go out and play or anything like that. So at some point it's like, okay, well, why don't you check this out for a while? Okay, you can play some extra Mario Kart today and all that sort of stuff. So so she's been gaming a little bit harder over the past week, I guess I would say. And yeah, it's interesting. She doesn't. Yeah, she'll use the left stick to walk around, but doesn't know that the right stick turns the camera. So she'll just hold down on the stick and keep walking towards the camera for 5 minutes. And I'll show her like, you can turn it like this, and she's like, okay. And she'll mess with that a little bit and end up looking at the sky and go like, can you fix it for me? Daddy, fix it for me. Like, okay, all right, I'll bring it back down so you can see where you're going. And so it's interesting watching her kind of like struggle's not the right word. She's just, she just hasn't wrapped her mind around how those sorts of controls work. But she can read all the buttons and all this other stuff. The triggers, I think, are confusing to her as well, especially because they don't just have simple letters or shapes on them. So it's hard to be like, no, you need to push this one. Like if I show her, pull this trigger, pull this to do this, she'll eventually figure it out. But it's like, I can't just go like, hit L2 and she'll, oh yeah, of course, L2. Yeah. Oh, you mean ZL? No, no one. No one means ZL. All right. All right. Hey, why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back. We'll talk more about, I don't know, Midnight Suns, Need for Speed, Callisto Protocol. You name it. There's some games that happened. We'll be. I didn't set this up. Oh, okay. We'll be right back after this. Composting always seemed like a gross, weird mystery to me. It was always like, a couple friends in high school with, parents that like to wear those leather sandals, all that sort of stuff. And they're like, yeah, man, we got our compost heap out back and all this other stuff. And it just looked like a pile of food garbage. And I was like, this seems gross. And I don't understand anything about it. Well, it's decades later, and I understand slightly more about it. Mostly that's not something I want to have in my backyard, a big mountain of junk, It's like I'm not enough of a gardener to need that much going on. But at the same time, there's something nice about being able to break down your food garbage into, nutrient-rich dirt that you can sprinkle on your lawn, or actually just even get rid of the food garbage without it stinking, without it stinking up your garbage cans, all that other stuff. That's where the Lomi by Pila comes in. The Lomi is a standalone device. It can sit on your countertop. You can kind of just put it where you need to put it, and you put your food scraps in there, fill it on up. It doesn't stink, so it's not like you got to fill it all up in one go. You can, fill it up little by little over a couple of days here and get it going. And then at the push of a button, Lomi gets to work. Lomi is a countertop electric composter that turns those scraps into dirt in under 4 hours. It doesn't smell when it runs. It's quiet, all that sort of stuff. So you can kind of, run it at night if you want to. And thanks to Lomi, you got a little bit less garbage at the end of the week. I don't know if you've got kids in the house that never eat their food, but you end up throwing away a lot of it. And suddenly you're like, well, I don't know what we're doing with this half can of SpaghettiOs. I don't know what we're doing with this other half can of beefaroni. And I don't know what we're doing with this. The list goes on and on. And now all that stuff can get turned into dirt, some nice soil that I can throw around on the lawn. There's some patches there that probably need a little bit of help here. The flowers out front will certainly benefit from all that sort of stuff. And it's just, less gunky garbage, which is pretty sweet too, huh? Do you want to make it sweet, huh? If you want to start making a positive environmental impact or just make cleanup after dinner that much easier, Lomi is perfect for you. Head to lomi.com/Jeff and use the promo code Jeff to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/Jeff and use the promo code Jeff at checkout. Food waste is gross. Lomi is your solution. And hey, with the holidays just around the corner, Lomi will make the perfect gift for someone on your shopping list, huh? Huh? All right, we're back. And hello. Recorded a new episode of Game Boys to Men this week. That's going to be hitting your Patreon feeds a little bit later in the week once I get it cut and ready to go. You can find out more about that. Go over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann, or there's dopeassvideogames.com will also get you there. You get an ad-free version of this very podcast if that's something that you're interested in knowing more about. You can head on over there. Patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Anyway, back at it. Midnight Suns. forgot that Midnight Suns was a card game until I installed it and started playing it. And yeah, it's a card game. Anyway, moving on. No, it's, you know, you see like, oh, Firaxis is making and I knew this in the back of my head because this game's been like announced or, you know, like whatever for over a year now, right? And so I knew it wasn't just like XCOM but with Marvel, but I think I was maybe expecting slightly more XCOM in it, and playing the early parts of that game and, you know, seeing the way that people have been talking about it and some of the things you do between battles and experiencing light bits of that for myself in the early parts of the game. I was like, gosh, I don't want to engage with any of the systems in this game whatsoever. So it's, you know, you start out, the tutorial has you with Iron Man and Doctor Strange, and they are quipping it up in a way that was just like, gosh, I hate this. I hate every time these characters open their mouth. I'm just like, God, shut up, shut up, shut up. And you know, you were getting different cards that are different types of attacks and stuff like that. So you know, Doctor Strange will have his whirlwind attack, and that's something that, like, if you line it up just right and there's an enemy behind the enemy, it'll knock the first enemy back into the other enemy. So, you know, positions and all that sort of stuff start to matter. Captain Marvel eventually comes into it not too long after that, and she'll rush over and do this kind of dash punch. You can pick up rocks like, without a card. If there are just rocks on the battlefield, you can walk over and pick up the rock and just hit somebody with a rock, which I thought was a nice touch. It was like, oh yeah? No, yeah, I can shoot lasers at you, but I'm just going to walk over here and go like, bah! And just hit you in the damn head with a rock. And then that's it, Hydra. Suck it. Suck it, Hydra. But yeah, I then, you know, so it's turn-based. So you are kind of able to play a certain number of cards before your turn ends, which is why the rocks are important, because that's something that, you know, you can do without a card and all that other stuff. And you know, and then they take a turn, and then you take your turn, and then more reinforcements show up, and you hit them more with some rocks or some cards or both. And then different cards will have like, oh, you need a certain number of heroism points before you can use this card, and you can discard these cards and get new cards if you don't like these cards. And I am just not a deck builder person. I think Midnight Suns really kind of honed it in for me, where it's just like, you know, these guys have a lot of abilities and powers, and I just want to be able to use them. If you want to give me like a meter on those individual characters that's like, hey, Iron Man's batteries need to charge up, so this is the end of your turn. Or, hey, Doctor Strange can only do so much magic in one turn, and you got to let these other guys come and hit you a bit. That would be fine with me. But I don't like the idea of just like, oh, I randomly didn't get the thing that I thought I was going to get, and now I can't do it until maybe the next turn, or maybe if I discard these cards, maybe then I'll get it. Like, I'm just not into that type of randomness when it comes to like your move set or your capabilities or something like that. I think that's my big problem with just deck builders in general, is that idea of just like I get no pleasure from, and I know a lot of people do, I get no pleasure from like, I built this deck that really combos really well and all this other stuff. And when the cards line up just right, ooh, there's nothing quite like it. Like, sure, great. I get no pleasure from that. Like, I don't want to sit there and deck build and all of that sort of stuff. It's just not my thing in any way. And so when you layer on top of that, the, you know, like even just those first conversations, when you make your character, you make a named character, in you know, immediately after finishing that tutorial, and then have this conversation with Blade, and I was like, oh gosh. That's when I handed the controller to my daughter, and she ran around for a while, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna mess with this a little bit longer, and just got to a point with it where I was just like, yeah, I don't like anything that this game is doing at all. It's just not for me. And that's unfortunate, you know, like I like Firaxis. I'm always kind of down to look and see what Firaxis is doing, but gosh, this is so not a thing that I want to engage with in any way, shape, or form. So I stuck with it for a little while longer, and then was just like, yeah, no, I got other stuff to play, and this is not this is not gonna be a good time for me. What else? So we talked about Ghost Simulator 3. A couple of small things. Elevator Action Returns S Tribute came out on Steam. This was potentially very exciting because this is Elevator Action Returns is the second elevator action game. It was released back in arcades in the 90s, and then it came to the Saturn. And I first heard of it when it came to the Saturn because it just showed up on some list of like, you know, at an import shop, you know, it's just like, hey, here's stuff you can pre-order. I was like, wait, there's another elevator action? Oh my God, we've got to get this. And so I spent, you know, my freelance import review money budget on importing a copy of that. And it's great. It's just a great arcade game. It's got some really good mistranslations that are very silly. And yeah, the arcade version is the superior version of the game to the Saturn version, but the Saturn version is a pretty good port. But it's just got a great style, some really good music, and it's just fun. And it has a character named Jad the Taff. It's just great names, great dumb name, Cart. Yeah, awesome arcade game. Not the longest thing in the world, but like, you know, what are you gonna do? This is a port of this. So this is on Steam. It might be on Switch as well. Anyway, it's on Steam, and it is a port of the Saturn version. So it's a port of a port. That's what the S Tribute means. This company has been doing a handful of Saturn ports for a while. It's on PlayStation as well, I'm told. Okay. It's very bare bones. It's very no frills. And it is basically that Saturn version of the game running well enough. The catch is the Steam version, like, they didn't think to map gamepad controls properly. So when you first launch it, you have to like hunt on the keyboard to figure out what key it wants you to press to move forward. It turns out it's the Z key. And so you have to use the Steam input like you would do, like you would on a Steam Deck. You have to like pop open this other stuff and go like, oh no, we need to map this to gamepad and set all the Steam stuff manually. And once you've done that, it's fine. But it's just one of those things where you're just like, this is the most budget busted, like, man, really? You didn't think to do any of this? Very strange that went down that way, but I guess, you know, it is this kind of weird budget thing and all this. So like the Saturn version, it does have this starts out unlocked by default, but there is a version of the original elevator action in there, and the menu option just says old. You go down there and you pick old, and it'll load that up. But that's a janky version of that game. I think it even was on the Saturn a janky, because, you know, this is just the Saturn version. I imagine they're like so it's like, what is it? Is it an emulation of a port? Anyway, we could talk semantics all day long. Old, you just pick old and play it. So I guess like it's okay, but it is very bare bones, and the Steam version in particular is very careless with its controller config stuff. So if you're gonna get it, know going in that you have to manually make some adjustments up top, or else you won't be able to do anything. I was sitting there at the menu going like, okay, I'm hitting all the buttons on this controller. I'm hitting the enter key. I'm hitting escape. I'm trying to hit F1. Like, what, you know, what's going to get me in this game? Is this thing just broken? And yeah, so I had to go in and manually set gamepad. But before that, I had to hit the Z key to get to the actual main menu. A very bizarre situation. Maybe they will fix that. I don't really know. But that's a good game. Again, I don't know. I'm not sure that I would say that it is $15 good. That's a little high for what you're getting here. If these were good solid, you know, if these were good solid emulated versions of the arcade versions of the game instead of the Saturn or something like that, like maybe that would be a little different. But it's a, yeah, I don't know. It's $15 is a little bit much to ask for that, I think. Need for Speed Unbound came out. We played some of that. I'm gonna play some more of it. I messed with it a little bit more after the stream, which that stream I think is back up on YouTube for now. Catch it in a limited run. I also uploaded it to the Patreon for safekeeping. So if you are a patron, you can go watch that video there. But like as soon as I uploaded that video, it got hit with, I think, 12 different music like, you know, copyright things or whatever, and one of them was like, no one can watch this video in any country because of the music here. So I disputed that one under the fair use clause and said, hey, this is crazy. And that put it back on YouTube while it is in limbo and while it gets decided. So my guess is in about 20 days that's going to get blocked again. So if you want to watch it on YouTube, watch it there. It's on the Patreon, so you can catch it there as well. And I have a local copy of it. I'll just put it, I'll put it in my Dropbox. I don't know. Yeah, it's I don't know what to do in those sorts of situations. It's a really yeah, I don't know. The whole music thing, the whole YouTube thing. The YouTube thing is really bizarre because of the way it all works, right? So when your stuff gets flagged that way, most of the time the video can still play. It's just being flagged by someone who says, we want the money from this because this is our music. And you can file a dispute for that and say, no, this is fair use, all this other stuff. But then like it goes to them. It goes back to the person who said, no, this is our money. And then they have to look at it and go like, well, what do you think? And every time I've been involved in it, they have said, no, yeah, this is still our money. You can dispute it, but if you escalate it one more notch, we can put a strike on your channel. And that has real effects. It's just like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can't go to Google. Like, they don't sit in the middle as an arbiter and try to make any calls on this. They just go like, it's y'all's. We don't want any part of this. Which is a terrible way to handle it. And so, yeah, you end up in these situations where, like, you know, basically when you hit the button to say, no, that's that, you don't get to claim that. That's fair use. Then they have 30 days to think about it. I'm going to say every time I've done it, on the 29th day, they finally go, oh, shit, right. We're going to run out of time. Reject it. No, fuck you. And it's like, what are we even doing? It's insane. It's a bad process. And it's a very bizarre process. Like I think in some situations there would be cases where it's like, oh yeah, this is copyrighted content and they probably should get some chunk of that money. Maybe not the whole thing, because it's like if a song plays for 30 seconds of a 3-hour video, does the copyright holder to that song deserve every single dollar on that? But this isn't even about the money for me, because like I am not making a significant amount of money on YouTube. It's not like I'm over here going like, I need my $1.50, you know, whatever it is. I need my $70 of Need for Speed money or whatever. It's just a ridiculous way to manage this sort of stuff. And it just seems like a super bad way to handle it. And YouTube added a thing where now you can just skip to step 2. You can just like say like, oh, we'll assume that they're going to reject it after 30 days. So let's just get to the high stakes part where they can put a strike on my channel. You're like, all right, I'm not going to do that because, and also like, there's no good. This seems like one of those things where the people out there are like, we have a YouTube class and we're teaching you YouTube school. Like, this is the stuff that actually should be explained way more thoroughly, if not by YouTube itself, than by someone else who says like, hey, you're going to get these types of claims, and here's what to do about it, and here's what not to do in these sorts of situations. And there's no good definitive like, hey, what do I do? Like, there's no good definitive answer to that question. The worst one I saw was Trombone Hero, where they're like, you know, clearly public domain works in that game that some dirtbag on YouTube has put a claim in on and said, this is our song. And so when I played Trombone Hero and put that up, it was like, oh, this is you did a cover version of Hava Nagila, and we own that, so you've got to pay us. I'm like, nuh-uh, that's not. No, I don't think that's how that works at all. But because I already went through the first rejection, and it's just like, okay, is it worth it to me to, like, you know, put my nuts on the table, as it were, and be like, all right, man, let's fucking go all the way. Like, am I going to push all the way for that? No. So I ended up unlisting the Trombone Hero video, because it's just like, well, on principle, it was like, I don't want people to watch this video because I don't want these fuckers getting any money. Not because it's like again, not because like, because it's my money. It's like, no, because they're scumbags. And that sucks. So yeah, I don't know. It's just yeah, someone needs to come in, someone extremely well funded needs to come into this space and fucking challenge all of those fuckos and like burn them, you know, because like individuals and you know, people out there just making videos and not getting a ton of, like, they can't afford, you know, it's like, oh, well, I guess my whole channel got taken down because I wanted to fight over this Hava Nagila cover. And like, okay, that's an extreme case, but it's like, that's what YouTube seems to say can happen when you escalate it to that next level. They're like, if they don't like it, they can put a strike on your channel. It's like, well, okay, but they're still wrong. So what happens then? I guess fuck me then, right? It's really bizarre. It was something that was it was kind of awesome in a weird way, because we didn't have to think about it for a very long time, because we were part of CBS. And when you're part of CBS, and when CBS is claiming copyright on every video, because it's like, no, this is ours, this is CBS, we're CBS. When someone else comes along and goes like, but this music, like, we're CBS. And so it was just something that was never even, you know, 1 out of 100 videos would get something weird on it like that, and you'd be like, huh, well, I don't know, forward this over to New York and have them get angry about it. I don't know, or not, whatever. But because it happens so infrequently, and now seeing it a lot more frequently, you know, in the years that followed, once we were no longer under the CBS umbrella, a lot of that stuff changed, which is fascinating if you think about it. Like, oh, yeah, I guess it makes sense that a major media company would have more pull than some little copyright holder that is trying to lay claims to music and all this other stuff. But that doesn't seem right either. I don't know. Whole thing's a mess. Welcome to the internet. It's a disaster here. Need for Speed Unbound it seems like a really good driving game, and I really don't think I like the structure around it, but the actual act of operating a motor vehicle and driving it around, and the city that they have created and all that sort of stuff seems good. I like the cop chase stuff is okay. I wish it would escalate more quickly, because it's just a little thin. But you also end up in these situations where, like, oh, I don't want to get a cop chase right now because I've got to get back to my base, and that's just a hassle if I have to escape these cops on the way and all this sort of stuff. And so it ends up in another situation where you're like, oh, now I have to, like, drive slow behind this cop, because if he sees me, it will trigger a car chase because I've got heat on my car. And that's a little bit of a, I don't know. It's just, it's kind of annoying. And yeah, I think that it's probably the best one of these they've made in years. But at the same time, that's a pretty low bar. And at the same time, I think a lot of the structure of it is not awesome. A lot of the structure, like, they still have a day-night cycle, as they have had in some of the past games. They've softened that stuff a little bit, because what used to be is like, okay, you're going to go out at night and do your cop missions and knock these cops off and do all this other stuff. And then during the day, you're going to race, but maybe the cops will be there. But your heat on your car accumulates, which means the cops want to, you know, when they see it, they get aggressive quickly. And that takes a long time to drain. So it encouraged you to drive different vehicles, which was usually a hassle, because usually you're like, no, this is the one car I like driving. Like, those other cars are fine and all, but I've left them behind. I've upgraded from them. I don't, you know, I rarely found myself with a stable of multiple viable vehicles, basically. But because you needed that heat to drain out, you would have to have at least 2 cars that you could swap between. This, they don't have that anymore. What they've done is at the end of the night, your heat drains out. So you go through 2 cycles. You go through a daytime and a nighttime. Kind of like Gotham Knights, except in Gotham Knights it's always night. But there's a definitive like, okay, return to base and cash in your stuff, and then things will move forward. And so you may find yourself out there. You're like, oh, well, I've done all the races I can do. I could drive around and do some of the open world stuff, crash through some billboards or whatever. Or I could go get in a cop chase or something like that. But at the end of the day, like, I'm pretty much done for the day. I should go back to base, cash in, let things advance, and then go back out for the next phase and do it again. And so the thing they do is, again, at the end of that night phase, all the heat drains out of your car. So you don't ever have to go drive a second car or anything like that, other than the story stuff where they steal your car and all this other stuff. And I think the story stuff is really, I think it's pretty terrible. I don't know. It just feels very telegraphed in terms of just like, it feels like a story that Need for Speed has told before, in terms of like, oh, you're getting into this street racing scene, and there sure is someone here who is funding you. And I have not finished the game. I should look it up because I don't know that I will actually finish it. But like, she's a cop. She's got to be a cop. They've done that story before. Maybe they didn't do it this time because they recognized that they did that story before. But it's very much seems like, oh, these are the feds. The feds are giving me money to be an illegal street racer because they're trying to take down the mayor or something. Who knows? It just feels very much like that is the story. I'll have to look that up. But like the way that story is told and the cutscenes and the characters and it's the line delivery, really. Like I've seen a lot of people going like, oh, this game is trying so hard to be youth culture and it's failing. But I feel like most of the people that are saying that have no idea what actual youth culture is. It's very easy to go like, oh, this stuff. But like, I guess I don't really know. I guess I don't really know. I don't think the kids act like this. I don't think the teens, the people in their 20s, I don't think that they talk like this. But it also a lot of it feels very old. It's a lot of like people going like, oh yeah, fam, but also saying it in the most wooden way possible. So it just feels like, I don't know, the slang feels a little old, and it feels like it's trying very hard. And both of those things combine to like some moments where you're just like, none of this feels earned. None of these characters feel like real human beings. This feels like a Mountain Dew can talking to me or something. This is like a Pepsi commercial come to life or something. You know, it's like, oh yeah, dog, let's go win the races. You know it, fam. It's lit. This Supra is fire. It's just like which, yeah, there are people that absolutely say that. That's not. Yeah. Anyway. So I think just a lot of that stuff just doesn't necessarily fit together properly. Because the line delivery is so devoid of any kind of attitude or flavor that it really just feels like these dry line reads of just like, yes, that's right. This is the shit. This car is the bomb. You know, they're not saying that. This car it's lit. Let's go. And all that sort of stuff. It's pretty rough, but the driving itself is pretty good. And there just aren't a lot of these games out there anymore. And so that all has to kind of count for something. I'm kind of waiting to see, you know, maybe if they patch it or something like, you know, like on the end of another patch or another driver update or something, like it doesn't run as great. It seems like it could be running more smoothly on my machine in particular. Not that this is the most powerful PC on the planet. What is this? This is a 5950X and a 3090 with more RAM than you need. And it just, I don't know, itchy in ways that you're like, man, this game doesn't look good enough to be hitching like this. I don't know there's something going on under the hood. But yeah, I don't know. It's exciting in a way because you're like, oh man, it's cool that there's finally another Need for Speed game out. And some people seem to be digging it. I'm kind of having like, yeah. For me, like the writing and the story stuff is really getting in the way of like the driving. And I wish that wasn't the case, but there's just so much of it that it's kind of hard to ignore. And I guess that's been my problem with it, is it does not feel authentic. It does not feel like that these characters are real people going through like, oh my God, all these cars were stolen and our reputation is ruined. Like, it just doesn't have that vibe. It doesn't pull it off. I think that's maybe my biggest problem with it. I think the soundtrack is it's got a very worldly flavor in terms of just like, here's a bunch of foreign hip hop you haven't heard. And I think that's cool on its own. But again, I don't think that necessarily, when you think about these characters, this scenario, these races, this sort of stuff, something about that in particular doesn't feel like it meshes with that soundtrack. It just, I don't know. A lot of it just feels like these disparate parts that just kind of don't fit together really well. But when you look at each individual part, with the exception of the writing and the dialogue, you're like, okay, yeah, this is cool. This is fine. This is good. But it's just not clicking together for me. I don't know. I want to spend some more time with it. It's also on a schedule where it's like the crux of the game. So once you really get through the tutorial and get out into the world, it's like, okay, in 4 weeks, there's going to be this big series of races and you need 4 cars in different classes to compete in these races. And so you've got to do these other races. You've got to spend your days wisely, earning money. You can have side bets on races, all this other stuff to try to make sure that you get to the end of this time frame. I'm sure there'll be twists and turns along the way, because why wouldn't there be? To be able to enter that final race with the cars that you need and all this sort of stuff. And I don't know. That type of schedules type stuff, I don't love that in games, but I haven't played enough to know exactly how hard of a limit that is. I doubt that they'll let you get to the end of that without the cars you need, right? They're not going to let you get 90% of the way there and then be like, oh, it's time for race 3 and you don't have a car for this class, so game over. I don't think it's going to do that, but in fact, I wouldn't be shocked if there was one more twist at the end of like, oh no, all the cars got stolen. Oh, don't worry, I'm the feds, so here's cars. Here, have some cars or something. And they just kind of ignore all the work you've put in. I wouldn't be shocked if it was something like that, but who knows? I want to play some more of it. It's a game that really kind of, the parts of it are really rubbing me the wrong way, but like, I do find myself wanting to see more of it. I do find myself wanting to see more of the open world stuff, because it has speed traps. Like, it really feels like they sat down and looked at Forza, and so like, oh, we'll put speed traps in all over the place. We'll do this. We'll try to make this open world just have more events in it than just billboards. But it does also have billboards and some other collectible type stuff like that. So yeah, I was hoping for more, I guess I would say, but at the end of the day, this does still seem like it's significantly better than what Need for Speed has been over the entire last generation. That was a real bad run of games there that they were on. Let's see here. Why don't we take one more quick break here, last break of the show, and then we'll talk about Callisto Protocol. All right? Cool. We'll be right back. Hey, let's head into the new year feeling secure, knowing that our data is stored securely off-site in the event that anything happens, a hard drive failure, a long list of crazy things that could happen that could separate you from your important data, your photos, videos, documents, tax stuff. Who knows what you're storing on those hard drives of yours? Well, we don't need to know. I don't need to know. Backblaze doesn't need to know. Backblaze is just interested in storing that data for you and keeping it secure. And they'll do so for just $7 a month. That's right. You pay Backblaze $7 a month, you install their app, and it just goes to work. It will back up your data off-site to their location. You can encrypt that for extra security if you like. And that's it. It runs in the background. You can make some minor tweaks if you would like to, customize that and customize which files get backed up. But if you've got a Mac or PC, it doesn't matter how much storage you've got in that machine. 500 gigabytes, 100 terabytes, whatever. $7 a month. That's a deal. Now, what happens if things go awry? Well, you can get at your data at any time with their web app. You can use this even if you're just like somewhere else and you're like, oh, I can't remote into my home machine. I need to get a hold of these 4 files. Like, you can even use Backblaze that way. It's very handy for that sort of stuff. And you can access those files on the go. Or, hey, you just bought a new hard drive because the last one got smoked. Swap that drive in and start downloading. If it so happens that you are, backing up a whole lot of data, they'll even send you a hard drive. They'll send you a hard drive in the mail. You copy it off onto your new stuff. You send it back to them, and you don't have to pay any additional. It's they'll get a full refund for sending back the drive, all that sort of stuff. And if you're working on different versions, like you're using this for business or something, maybe you need like an additional, retention history time frame. You can, for extra $2 a month, that retention history can be 1 full year. Backblaze has restored over 55 billion files for customers. That's a lot of failed hard drives. It's a lot of failed hard drives. And you can try it now, right now, immediately, for yourself with a free, fully featured, no credit card required trial at backblaze.com/Jeff. Head over there, sign up, download the app. You can check it out for 15 days and get a sense of how the app works. Play around with it a little bit, start protecting yourself from potential bad times and start today for, again, just $7 a month. And you can restore those files anywhere in the world, sitting in front of your computer with a new hard drive in it, ready to fill back up. Or, hey, if you're just somewhere and you're like, oh man, I know that there's 3 files sitting on my F drive, and how do I get to my F drive? Oh, right, I can get to the backup of my F drive over here, all this other stuff. It's incredibly easy to use. It has saved me on multiple occasions. I have come to rely upon it on 2 of my machines here, a server machine that is running Windows, and my regular desktop that is also running Windows. I have a MacBook, but if that thing goes up, and who cares? I don't care about any of the data that's on that one, so I'm not packing that one up because I haven't turned it on in a year and a half. But these 2 machines, secure. Anything happens, I know that data, I can get it back like that. That was me snapping a finger. I don't think it came through on the microphone, but that's I can't. The microphone just cuts all that out. The miracle audio technology is unmatched, except for the miracle of Backblaze. Go to backblaze.com/Jeff today. Install that free trial, no credit card required. Mess around with it, see what you think, and you can sign up for just $7 a month. Callisto Protocol, that's a game that's out from your friends at Crafton, the PUBG folks. And it is a Dead Space-esque third-person action adventure horror-themed video game that was originally said to be set in the same universe as PUBG, which, now that I've played Callisto Protocol for myself, I would be really fascinated to see how that worked out, because this is a game where you are flying in space. You are a spaceman, a space pilot, a freelancer, hauling things for, off of some prison moon, and things go bad. You end up crashing on the prison moon, and they decide that that's a crime and you're a criminal and now you're an inmate, which is unfortunate for you. Then after that, you are set loose in the prison. Things go awry from there. On top of that, things go awry at multiple levels, to the point where it's like, there's like big zombie things running around this prison, and boy, it's bad. And so you get to run around and do some Dead Space-esque stuff. The combat in this game out of the gate is pretty fascinating. What they've done is, it seems very easy out of the gate, and I bet that as you play more of it, it will, they will ramp it on you. But I have only played a little bit of it, and I am going to wait to play more of it, and I may restart playing it on a console instead of on PC. But basically, the combat is, if you are holding left or right when an enemy attack comes in, your character will automatically dodge to the side like it was Punch-Out or something. It's crazy. And so you can kind of sway out of the way of those attacks, and the only thing you have to do to keep dodging those attacks is keep going left, right, left, right. You can't go left, left, because you can't double up on a side. But as long as you're switching sides, he will continually sway out of those attacks. You can hold back to block, or down, I guess, back in a third person behind the back sort of sense, not in a fighting game sort of sense. But yeah, you hold down to block, and then the right trigger will attack. At the outset of the game, you've got some kind of big metal club thing that you're just clubbing these zombies with. And so it looks nice because you're swaying out of these attacks and then hitting attacks, so you're coming back in and kind of countering with this big overhand, just bonk, just clubbing the shit out of these fuckers. And then once they're down, you can walk up to them and hit the Y button over and over again to stomp on them in a Dead Space-like way, which is good because they've done that. They've at least put that in there. And items will pop out when you stomp them. That's actually part of the tutorials, like, stomp them and make items come out. You're like, oh, right, Dead Space, right. It's a buggy mess. The game crashed on me hard in the first hour in, and I had said, okay, I'm good. I'm not going to... I spent a good half hour just trying to tweak. Again, it's a 5950X and a 3090. And I started messing around with all the different settings. It does have ray tracing, and I want to see what that looks like, because it's a very dark game, and you can envision, like, oh, if you had like a good ray tracing ready rig, that could look really neat. But this 3090 just can't cut it. Because it goes from... It has a benchmark in it. I can run the I can turn everything up to ultra, except and leave ray tracing turned off, and get 100 frames a second out of it. If I turn on ray tracing, that drops to 50. And also, it's very uneven and stuttery and all this other stuff. And so they've got work to do. This game launched with like horrible stuttering problems. That they have. So by the time I loaded it up, they had already patched it, and to fix the in-game stuttering problem. And part of that patch was like, by the way, when you launch the game for the first time, it's gonna run like shit at the menus and stuff. And sure enough, like it took me like the EULA screen froze on me for like 40 seconds, and I couldn't scroll the message down because it was too busy like compiling shaders or whatever it's doing. On the other end of that, it's done, and it's done, right? So at least but they need to put a meter. Call of Duty has been doing this for years. They just know to put a thing in the upper screen that says, hey, we're doing shader shit, it's 40% done, like, don't play yet, let it sit here for a while. Like, it needs a message like that, and I think no one would even be talking about this. But yeah, I guess even on Ultra, there were parts of it that I thought didn't look all that great. Not just from a lighting perspective, but just like some of the color in world looked a little weird. There's just aspects of it that just didn't look like it was running great and felt very uneven and all this sort of stuff. It is a nice looking, like the character models, the faces and all that sort of stuff, I think look really good. But there's just like, once you're in game and playing it, I thought there were aspects of it that just looked kind of whatever. It was not as impressive as the cutscenes, basically. That combat is interesting, but also you know, I could see that getting a little bit monotonous. I understand there's guns and stuff later on. But yeah, I don't know what needs to happen here if that's a situation where, because they've said that they need to do more work to the PC version of the game, and yeah, they clearly do. But also, yeah, I wonder how far they'll get on it. I know what the console versions, as I understand it, the Xbox version estimate, which is a shame because the other version of it I have is the Xbox version, and apparently that has some issues as well. But apparently PS5 runs good. So, I think I might wait this one out a little bit. Because the stomping does feel good. Stomping those enemies out once you've killed them, stomping health out of them, does look pretty nice and does feel pretty good in the way that it sort of did in Dead Space, but not quite. I'll tell you this: playing an hour of this left me way more interested in seeing what the Dead Space remake is going to end up looking like. Reboot, whatever we're calling it this week. And feeling hopeful for whatever is going to happen with Dead Space after this, because this feels rough in some ways, and then just design wise feels a little strange. Like I said, I didn't get super into it because, you know, I died and the game crashed. Like I'd been playing for a while, and you know, you get to the next enemy and all this other stuff, and I was dodging, but one guy did 2 hits instead of 1, and I went for my counterattack, but he actually got in the middle and got in there and got the last hit. I fell over dead, and then it just went boom. Hey, do you want to send a message to Epic about this Unreal Engine video game? Because it just crashed, dog. I was like, oh, word. I'm just going to close this and not play it. and that's my new plan. So I don't know. We'll wait and see what they end up doing to it. Because there's parts of it I want to see. And honestly, like from a technical perspective, I would be interested in seeing what that game looks like with all the ray tracing stuff turned on. I don't know if that's something that they're going to be able to make better on my paltry 3090, or if you're going to have to upgrade. I've got some news on that front. I've got a 4090 showing up tomorrow, so I was able to get my hands on one, and we'll see how that goes. I bet it doesn't fix it. I bet Callisto Protocol still ends up not running well with all the ray tracing stuff turned on somehow. I bet that game will find a way to not run right. That's my guess. But we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Parts of it seem intriguing, but then, you know, also like seeing when the reviews hit, seeing the way people were talking about it was a good realization. It's like, oh man, yeah, this game sounds like it's got a ton of issues, and also that they just made huge mistakes with the combat later in the game. Like they built this kind of cool combat thing and then play against it for a lot of the game, which sounds very frustrating. It sounds very frustrating, but yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I do want to spend a little bit more time with it, and I mostly just at this point though, I'm curious. Like if when I slap that card in, assuming it fits in the case, what will it do to those frame rates? Because like I said, I could get 100 on Ultra, and I would get 50 with ray tracing turned on. And it would say, set it down to medium. And then I would set it down to medium, but leave ray tracing turned on. And it would still be like 50. You know, it didn't help turning the other stuff down. It's like if ray tracing is on, then it does not run at 60, basically. Which, yeah, not great. Not great. Speaking of not great, why don't we get into the news? Super Smash Brothers. Have you heard of this? They made the Nintendo characters fight each other. It's Mario and Zelda punching each other. Like, what is that about? I thought it was all love, but apparently not. It is ridiculous to see this. Have you seen this? You got Luigi punching Yoshi? Just like I have always dreamed? Ridiculous. And they've got all these other characters from other games. It's a thing. You should check this Smash Brothers thing out. They got all these fun items that pop out that you can use that are like from Nintendo's past. You can find a Super Scope, the old Super Scope 6, and shoot people with it. It's crazy. It's like Nintendo made a love. You know how Astro's Playroom has all that nostalgic PlayStation stuff in it? Smash Brothers is like that, but all the items are things you can pick up and use in the game. You're like, I got a fire flower from the Mario, and it's making me shoot fire. Crazy. It's awesome. You should see this stuff. They got Pokeballs in it. It's something else. Anyway, I guess some people play it competitively, or at least they used to. This has been an absolute shit show. I'll turn the captions back on. That's how much of an absolute shit show it has been. Gosh, where to start here? So, let's see. I've got a story from Eurogamer. I've got a story from Video Games Chronicle. Everyone's been kind of reporting on this a little blow by blow. Which is crazy for a game that's like, it's like a party game for kids. You know, it's like you're having fun and experiencing the depth and breadth of the Nintendo universe. But apparently these guys play it for money. I don't know. I mean, you know, whatever. People will throw baseball cards at a wall for money if you let them. So I guess it's not that surprising, but here we go. Let's see. This all started when the Smash World Tour Championships issued a statement saying that they had to cancel their 2023 tournament and also their 2022 finals because Nintendo would not license them to run the event. And they had this big, long kind of screed about like this other company called Panda Global that has an official license to run esports. That's what they call it. Competitive gaming. They call it esports, which is fun. It's like it's email, but for football, I guess. And so this Panda Global company had acquired a license to run tournaments and all this other stuff, and they have been flexing that in a number of different ways for kind of a while now, from the sounds of things. And so the people behind Smash World Tour Championship came out and said, like, hey, you know, Panda's been going around kind of sabotaging our thing, saying, hey, they're you know, that these events aren't going to be run. Nintendo then issued a statement saying like, whoa, Panda has nothing to do with this. We think your tournament is, you know, whatever, like you're not running it right, health reasons, whatever. You know, they didn't get specific, but they did try to defend their partner in Panda Global here as part of that process. They also claimed that they did not ask the Smash World Tour people to cancel their 2022 finals, just that they would not be able to do anything in 2023. And so yes, the Nintendo statement cites the high standards we require when it comes to the health and safety of our fans, rather than anything that Panda was doing. And so who knows? Like maybe the Smash World Tour people were like running it fast and loose during a pandemic and all this other stuff, or maybe they had a crab friendly, like everyone bring your own crabs and throw them wherever. Sort of thing, maybe, you know, that Nintendo could not abide by. We don't really know. They did not get super specific on that. And basically, then there was more dialogue. Basically, the what it sounds like is they were saying, oh, the head of Panda Global, this guy, Dr. Alan Bunny, which is a great name. Panda Global. You know, Dr. Alan Bunny's company. Why would... basically what they found was that he had been going around talking mad shit about other tournaments and basically implying that those are all going to get canceled anyway. You need to come be in our show and that sort of stuff. And that dude sounds like he sucks. And I feel like this is not the first time that I've seen people say, hey, that dude sucks. I don't know him. That's just what I hear. But yeah. So the knock-on effect of this is basically once Panda came out and said like, no, man, no. The thing with him, we'll look into that. A bunch of players who were sponsored by Panda Global, not just Smash players, but people in other, the content creator, like all this other stuff, basically said, we don't want to be affiliated with Panda Global anymore. If this is how they're running things, like we don't want to be a party to this at all. And so Panda basically says that they have booted out their CEO, Dr. Allen. Hit the bricks. You have been a jerk. And I'm going to look at his Twitter now, and I know this is foolish that I'm doing this, but the last thing I saw from him was, yes, okay, on December 4th, he said, I've stepped down as CEO of Panda to protect the safety and well-being of the team. I don't know, that the implication there is that they were getting threats, but they don't really come out and say that. But the statement from Panda Global doesn't say he's no longer affiliated with it, because doesn't he like own the thing? Anyway, he my statement with evidence is coming. And then there's an attached image with 2 bullet points. SWT lied. And the second bullet point is BTS leadership put the community in jeopardy. I don't know who BTS is in this specific case. Is it the K-pop? Did they how deep does this go? We'll never know. People are saying beyond the summit. I don't know what that is. This, I believe it was Sebmal on Twitter said that this sounded like a real Papa John kind of move, and it does. Like, I feel like he's like 3 days away from saying like, I've seen 40 sex kicks in 30 days, or whatever it is. So this whole thing is in straight up disarray. Obviously, the Smash World Tour has been canceled for this year and next, and Nintendo was kind of left like sort of holding the bag on this a little bit, where they put out that statement saying, "Oh yeah, that had nothing to do with Panda," and then Panda was like, "Actually, maybe that didn't, but there's other shit happening over here, so this guy's out." Even though I think people are wondering how out is he really. That was the last thing I saw was people going like, what does out mean? The Panda statement is very ambiguous, and so the whole thing's a shit show, and that's a shame. A player / streamer named Ludwig has decided to put together a tournament real quick and put $50,000 of money into that just to try to get this scene. Get something happening in this scene as it spirals apart and all this sort of stuff. So I don't. We'll see how that goes. I mean, that sounds like a fun grassroots thing, but at this point, I think the lesson here is don't trust anybody in this. Like, especially Nintendo. I think Nintendo has shown for a good long time that they really don't fully understand the best way to support this type of scene, this type of esports scene, this type of community. I think Nintendo, when you look at their behavior around Evo and like, oh well, or hey, we really don't want you playing the old Smash Brothers at tournaments because we know you're playing it on fucking hacked devices and you're playing modded versions of the game, and like, hey, like, don't, like, which I think is totally reasonable for them. to have that view. Also, it's a very Nintendo thing to have that view, but it's very easy to see, and it just feels like yet another case of like, boy, oh boy, Nintendo has no idea how to handle anything that involves the modern internet and communities and all of this sort of stuff. Like, they really just don't know what to do. They don't know how to build games to appropriately support those communities. They don't, they really, really just don't know what they're doing when it comes to that stuff. And I don't think they have to know, and I don't think they have to care. I think that's the whole Smash Brothers esports thing. I think they look at and go like, there's an opportunity here, I think, but like every time we get close to it, something fucked up happens, or some of these people are like, these people are all scumbags. What is it about adult Smash Brothers players that turns them into a bunch of dirtbags? This seems But yeah, this is still a shit situation, because there's a lot of players who were, looking to go to that tournament that is now canceled, and of course that their whole next year is fucked up by this supervillain sounding Dr. Allen. And yeah, we will see how this all goes. I can't, it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where, when Dr. Allen puts forth his statement with evidence, that anyone comes out of that going like, oh shit, man, sorry, we had it all wrong, you're clearly in the right here. When, like, I feel like Panda has had a really shitty rep across the entire community for a long time. Like, speaking as someone who does not follow this shit at all, it sure feels like every time any of this stuff comes up, it is because someone is like, yeah, that Panda company really sucks. Like, they're really fucking us over. They are really trying to control this in a way that they should not be allowed to. And because Nintendo really doesn't want to be involved in this on a deep day-to-day level, it seems that Nintendo is just kind of like hoping that Panda will take care of it. They're like, oh yeah, we'll give these people the license, and we'll be willing to license other people. This is the thing they said. But you really get the impression that Nintendo does not want to get their hands involved, like dirty, or really, really be involved in any of this stuff. They're just like, oh yeah, this is the party game we made for kids. It's got the, yeah, you can throw Pokeballs in it and Pokemon come out. It's cool. I don't know what you people are doing, but like, I guess you keep buying the game, so I guess we have to at least pretend to care about this. But boy, could we outsource that? Could we outsource that caring to someone else? This Dr. Allen guy's got a pretty good pitch deck. Maybe we just outsource it to him, and then we can go back to not making Metroid, or whatever it is we do around here. That's I don't know. That's the impression I get from it, from the whole thing, is that this is something that Nintendo was hoping would never happen, because they could just be like, yeah, cool, man. Yeah, we'll license this company to do it. They'll run the tournaments and fucking fine. Go. And yet, here we are. As part of all this stuff, Panda has postponed its tournament. They had the Panda Cup finale coming up. They have postponed that due to safety concerns to their staff and contractors. And that they are basically like, their statement is that Allen is no longer CEO, effective immediately. In the interim, Panda employees are working with outside advisors to form a temporary interim management committee to act as CEO to navigate this critical time. The identities of those in the IMC will not be made public at this time due to concerns over harassment and safety. And so basically they're saying that, like, oh, if you want to resign from your contract with us, if you want to get out of your sponsorship deal, we will find a way out for those people, and all that sort of stuff. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think as long as you've got a case where Dr. Allen is probably not as out as people want him to be, and he's got his statement with receipts coming, like this, there's a level of defiance to all of that is like very clearly like, oh, you're trying to desperately save money. You're trying to save your money. You're trying to save your business. This is not some community minded, like, rah, rah, we're going to get it all. Everyone's going to be happy at the end of this. No, there's more to this, right? Anyway, we'll see what happens next. I don't know. It's been a shit show for the last week, but such as Smash Brothers. Microsoft has announced plans that they will be raising the price on their first-party games from $60 to $70. In 2023, this will happen. This is according to Rebecca Valentine at IGN. And basically, this is going to apply to games including Forza Motorsport, Redfall, and Starfield. All those games will be $69.99 at launch. Regional pricing may differ. And the quote that Microsoft gave to IGN is, this price reflects the content, scale, and technical complexity of these titles. As with all games developed by our teams at Xbox, they will also be available with Game Pass the same day they launch. A lot of people are connecting this to statements that Phil Spencer made not that long ago, saying like, hey, we're not looking to raise prices on anything this year, but hey, next year, we may have to make some moves. And I think people thought that would be like a hardware, because, we have Sony kind of raising price on hardware and some of those changes going out of the market. But this is the first move on that front. We'll have to wait and see if hardware is impacted by any of this, or if the price of Game Pass ever goes up or anything like that. But this, you shouldn't be paying. You should. In a world where Microsoft is actually shipping a number of video games in a calendar year, which let's assume for the moment that 2023 is going to be one of those years. Game Pass is a pretty good deal still across the board. Even if you look at it and it doesn't have a lot of the big first party hits or whatever, because there just aren't, those games don't exist right now. The third party stuff they've been getting has still been pretty good. And it is still a solid deal. And so when you actually get to a period of time where Microsoft is releasing big games like Forza Motorsport, like Starfield, Game Pass becomes an even bigger deal at that point. So it's one of those things you look at and go like, they should just fucking charge $100. It's like, do they just want to drive people to Game Pass? If so, then, this will probably drive an additional number of people over to Game Pass. And that's probably good for them long term. So it's yeah, I don't know. No one should be paying $70 for those first party releases. I feel like you should probably be on Game Pass, even on PC. I know the only hassle there, I think right now, is for Steam Deck owners, because you would want to own the game on Steam to play it on a Steam Deck. So they will probably feel that $10, I assume, because that stuff, I imagine, will apply to the PC versions of the game. It doesn't actually say here. It really is just sticking to the Xbox Series X versions of the game. In terms of pricing, it doesn't say anything about PC in this article. So maybe there's a weird scenario where PC games end up being, $10 cheaper or something weird like that. I doubt it. I doubt that'll be the case. But but we don't know for sure. But yeah, this seems like one of those things you look at and go like, yeah, I guess this is inevitable. Is it a good thing? I don't necessarily think so. But at the same time, people should be subscribing to Game Pass. I still firmly believe that it is a good deal, and especially in this scenario where, these games you may want to play. Like when you look at it, like, okay, you're going to pay $70 for Starfield, or you're just going to like pay whatever if you buy 2 games a year that end up on Game Pass, right? It's about that. It's about 2 games, right? Then it's a better deal for you to just buy Game Pass, or it's kind of a toss up at that point. So not a huge surprise. And yeah, just kind of, it seems like something that'll just further drive people to Game Pass as far as that goes. So I don't know. Or yes, that's the, yes. Zimbo in the chat says, I subscribe to Game Pass so I can pay a monthly subscription to play Vampire Survivors. Didn't feel like enough just paying the $5 once. There you go. Subscribe to Vampire Survivors today. But also, a lot of people will do the thing where they sign up for a month to play a game like Starfield or whatever, and then cancel. People will just like try to do it $15 at a time or whatever it is. And all that. We'll see if the Game Pass prizes rise. That'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't think that they would immediately try to raise those prices because they really are trying to build that base, and they're still, I think they still do if you want a $1 trial, I think you still get that stuff, right? So they're really still trying to get people in through the door on Game Pass and grow that as big as they can. So what may change there is if they are shipping their big first-party games, maybe they do fewer deals on the third-party side because they feel like, oh, well, this is a great deal because of these games, so we don't have to go out and get Outriders. No, I don't know. Yeah, like the kind of bigger full-price retail third-party games. Maybe we see fewer of those in a year where Microsoft is actually shipping multiple $70 games. I reinstalled Fortnite. I played some Fortnite last night for the first time in a while. They finally found a way to get me to reinstall Fortnite, and it is upgrading all of the guts to it to Unreal Engine 5. 5.1, actually, which I didn't even know was a thing. So they, over the weekend, they had their kind of end of chapter event, and now, I guess, what is it? We're on chapter 4. Chapter 4, season 1. They're writing the fucking Bible over there. And with this change comes all of the UE5 stuff, Nanite, Lumen, all of the sorts of things that you have heard them talk about in tech demos. All of this sort of stuff is now in there. Lumen is their real-time global illumination system that doesn't necessarily need ray tracing hardware, but it sounds like it will benefit from it if you have it. I need to double check and make sure I had that turned on now that I think about it. It's got temporal super resolution. There's a lot of buzzwords in here, but basically they have jacked up Fortnite and slid an entirely new fucking chassis under it and slapped that on top. The graphic settings in the game have wildly changed, the settings screen and what's at your disposal to change. A lot of different stuff there. It sounds like it looks like they are discontinuing support for Windows 7 and 8. Not immediately, but in about 3 months, I guess. Starting with season 2 of chapter 4, they will discontinue support for 7 and 8. You will need to be on Windows 10 or higher. But now they're running DX12. They're doing, they've got reflections. They've got hardware-based ray tracing in there if you want it for global illumination or just reflections and like all that sort of stuff. And you load it up. Looks nice. It does. It looks really nice. Fortnite always looked nice. So it's like the sort of thing where you're like, kind of like, is this what am I looking at here? Because I just don't play enough Fortnite to know. So to me, it kind of just looks like Fortnite, but it does look, it's a very nice looking game. The trees look great. There's a snowy area now. You get, like perks as you play now. That's the thing. They've like a meter fills up, and then it's like, okay, pick one of these 2 bonuses that only last through this round, and it's like, oh, you regain health by hiding in a bush. You can regain health, which is almost like a Rumbleverse kind of thing. Which is kind of a neat game. Yeah, I found a fishing spot, but I didn't have a fishing pole. Someone ran up and killed me with a gigantic hammer. And yeah, I don't know. They do have a lot of settings in here for video settings. I would be curious to see if lower end machines are now kind of running it notably worse than it did before, now that they have made these changes. But they do have a performance mode in there that is now, they have relabeled it as performance, lower graphical fidelity. And so they do have an option in there to turn off, a bunch of the other effects and stuff like that. So presumably they are still able to run that game on low rim. What they're saying, okay, so the minimum specs for PC to run Nanite is if you have an NVIDIA card that's a Maxwell generation card or newer, DX12, Maxwell. Which one was Maxwell? The 2080 cards or the 1080? Those are 900 cards. Okay. I've got a 980 around here somewhere. Drop it in there, play some Fortnite. That seems reasonable. I don't know. Like, would people have even older graphics cards to try to... Would they still be using them and still using them to play Fortnite? I bet this is an absolute situation where they have all this data, right? They know who's using what, who's running what. Like, they can look at some kind of stats on how many people are running that game from Windows 7, how many people are running that game from extremely old graphics cards. I'm sure that these are partially data-driven decisions, right? Where they're like, oh, it's like 0.1% of our overall user base is running on a graphics card older than this. So that's a pretty safe. We can cut those people off and feel okay about it. I imagine that sort of stuff. Their recommended specs to run Nanite, a 2080 or newer, or an RX 5700 or newer, if you will. And yeah, I don't know. I played a couple rounds of it and realized now that I need to go back in and actually check to make sure that I turned all that stuff on for the ray tracing and all that sort of stuff. Because when I was going indoors, outdoors, like there's some really good shadows and really good lighting and stuff like that at play in the game. And they put the Doom guy in it. They put the Doom guy on the battle pass. The fuck is that about? You have to be, I believe, level 26 to get the Doom man into your video game. I also forgot they're selling RoboCop for that game right now. You can just go buy RoboCop. I have a guy, I don't know, I just have a Fortnite guy, but he kind of looks like a Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe, but like he's wearing snow stuff. I don't know. I thought he looked kind of cool. I don't have Goku or anybody like that, but I got this guy. So I wonder if that makes me like, do I have like the cool old stuff that you can't even buy anymore? Like, are people like going to try to steal my account because I've got cool Snake Eyes looking dude? I don't know. Anyway, it was interesting seeing the reaction to Doom guy going into the game. And yeah, there were people who were like, I can't believe they're all just another nail in the coffin for Bethesda owning Doom and ruining it like that. It was just like this really bizarre, like, what are you defending? What is wrong with you? What the hell is going on? That like, that's your, I feel like at most, I feel like the most negative you could be about this is just like, all right, well, I don't play Fortnite, so I don't care. Like that's like, but the idea that people would be like, oh, they put the Doom man in the kids game. Doom is for men. Doom is for men like me. I'm eating raw meat over here. I don't know. I think it's cool. And I think it speaks well to the impact of Doom, the ongoing legacy of Doom, that it's in there. They're putting the dude from The Witcher in there. The Witcher. The Witcher man. Dave Witcher. They're putting him in there. Yeah, I don't know. I look at that and go like, that's really cool. There's like a Cacodemon glider that you can get as well. And I just look at it and go like, yeah, man, that's great. You've got the Doom man in there with Goku and RoboCop, like, like massive franchises, big characters, big, meaningful, mainstream You've got the Doom Man. You've got Ariana Grande. You've got RoboCop. Goku. Fucking what? Like, that's, I don't know. Like, I feel like most multiverse type of stuff at this point is fucking played the fuck out. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels so done to death in the most shameless, businessy sorts of ways possible. And yet, I think there's something about the way Fortnite does it in a way where they're just like, this is their thing, and they've been kind of doing this thing for a lot longer than a lot of other multiverse kind of things have been. I think they get away with it as a result of that, and it's because those characters are coming into their game and doing the things that their game does. It's not always, it's like, no, they're still going to play Fortnite. It's still Fortnite. It's not, you know, it's not like they're bending over backwards to fit this stuff in. Some of the stuff they do, you know, when the Marvel event comes around and they do, you get the fucking Infinity Gauntlet in this time limited mode. You know, they did that stuff. There's the Dragon Ball stuff, like all that. Like, I don't know. I think that stuff's really cool. It's not some, like, I'm not like, I don't know. I'm just not into that game because I just don't feel like I don't really like the shooting all that much. But I did load it up and start digging through the store, and like the soccer player Messi, he was in there, and he's also in Call of Duty. And they have LeBron James is in Fortnite, but as a soccer player, which I don't understand how that works. I think they did some kind of like soccer promotion alongside, well, like the World Cup. I have no idea. But it does beg the question, like, what is the target demographic for Fortnite in this in this day and age where you've got RoboCop in it? Who likes RoboCop? The kids don't like RoboCop. The kids don't know what the Doom Man does. The kids don't give a shit about The Witcher. But yeah, I assume that they've got a much wider age range of players than anyone like lets on or something, right? Like it's very easy to think about Fortnite as like, oh, it's for kids. It's these Gen Z guys. I don't know what they're doing. They're just drinking vanilla lattes and playing Fortnite or, you know, whatever. But like, I don't know. I know plenty of people that are in their 30s up to my age that have started playing a lot more Fortnite lately. It really seems like that zero build mode is the thing that brought people back to Fortnite. I feel like I hadn't had a conversation about Fortnite in a year or more. You know? It was just like, oh, Fortnite's happening, and I assume it's still popular, but whatever, who cares? Like, you know, there's a billion other games coming out, and you know. But then when they put that no build mode in, now it feels like everyone, like there was just a wave of people suddenly talking about Fortnite all over again, and it was people, again, like people, you know, like getting up to around my age and in their 30s and stuff like that. It just seemed like an older audience maybe came to Fortnite as a result of the zero build mode, which is interesting. I didn't like the building in that game either, so I think that's a really solid addition. I think that's a cool move on their part to be like, hey, this thing that was like one of the key differentiators for us early on, yeah, we're gonna let you turn that off. Also, there's fucking dirt bikes in this game now, and you can do tricks. We put a trick system in this game, so there's enough other stuff going on now that we can move away from the building. It's fine. Which is fascinating. And you know, like I think it's interesting moves on their part in terms of just like being able to find new ways to bring people into the fold and or bring people back, as it were, and get people to try it out again and all this other stuff. Like, I'm probably never going to sign up for the monthly, like, I you know what, I will probably never buy a battle pass for Fortnite. I did at one point for like season 3, like very early on. I was like, well, let's buy this battle pass and see what it gets you. But I just don't play enough Fortnite to want to do that. So yeah. But I think if I ended up playing it enough to unlock the Doom Man, but I had to buy the battle pass, like you earn stars and you can spend the stars how you want on the battle pass, but some of the things on the battle pass you need to own the battle pass to unlock, and some of them are free. So I think if I ended up with enough stars and enough levels or whatever to unlock the Doom Man, I would probably do that, I guess. I don't know. But like, you know, you wonder like who else ends up in this game at this point. Like, you know, it's passé to have the conversation about like, oh, put this person in Fortnite, because they have proven that they will just fucking do shit, you know? I think once you had, well, I don't even know who was first to really like through the door to go like, man, this is insane that this is really crazy. But like Goku is a really good crazy one. But like RoboCop is a really good, like just demographically strange one also. And so, yeah, I don't know. There's just, it seems like there's a real willingness on their part to just do some real silly shit. And have fun with their game and make it turn on a dime if they have to, all the way back to when they looked at PUBG and said, that seems popular. Maybe we could do that with Fortnite. And now here we are. But yeah, I don't know. There are other modes in there that look almost like they're team deathmatch. There's something in there that just says Team Rumble. There was something like there. I don't know if I maybe I will explore some of that stuff and see what else is in there. I'm kind of curious now. But anyway, long story short, them taking the technology end of Fortnite and totally upgrading it to UE5, I think it's pretty awesome. Like, there aren't a ton of Unreal Engine 5 games out there on the market yet, right? So, I mean, and this is, again, UE 5.1, which this was the first I'd even heard that there was a 5.1, but of course there is. I think that's great. I think that's probably good for them from an engine adoption standpoint, if they can say like, oh, by the way, like, it's not just this theoretical fucking thing. Like, it is powering our, you know, the latest version of our engine is now powering our most popular game. This isn't some, you know, they always said that they didn't consider Unreal Engine finished until they had shipped a game on it, right? And then back then that used to mean like, okay, we put out Gears of War, and so that means UE3 is now off to the races, and you know, we can support it more fully now that we've been through the process of building and shipping a game on it and all this other stuff. But they don't really ship games anymore. They just update Fortnite. So it's cool that they did that. And yeah, I don't know. It looks nice. The Game Awards are happening this week in Los Angeles, California. I am looking to attend the event live. That's the current plan. So I'm going to head to LA and see the show, see some folks, say hi, all that other stuff. And of course, there are a bunch of scheduled reveals happening at the event. Some will happen on the pre-show, but some will happen on the show itself. I don't know that we know a ton of what's going to be there just yet. They did say that Star Wars Jedi Survivor would be showing up there. Tekken 8 will be appearing there in some form. 505. And I guess Epic have put up a teaser site for a game that appears to be promoted by Michael Madsen. You know, is this where is Kojima going to show a game here after all the teases that he's been doing for a while? Maybe. Video Games Chronicle seems to be indicating that Crash Bandicoot Wumpa League will be announced there. Trying to think what else here. Yeah, that Wumpa League. And Ed Boon got out and said, "Hey, we're not going to announce a game at the show." much like he did back in the kind of E3 timeframe and all that sort of stuff. I think people had said like, oh, well, if they're not here, then clearly they're going to have to announce a game at the Game Awards. It's like their last shot before the end of the year. If they're going to ship a game in April, they need to announce it. If they're all this other stuff. And so he got on Twitter and said like, you know, basically like, hey, thanks for being so interested in what we're doing next and all this other stuff. It's great. But we are not planning to announce a game at this time, which is interesting. And of course, yes, Ed Boon has been known to lie on Twitter or you know, it's maybe they're more half truths than lie, but I don't think that you come right out and say we're not going to be there and then have something there. You know, I think that's probably like a bridge too far on some of that stuff. So that sort of stuff, much like back at the, you know, Gamescom or some of the other things where he got out and said like, nope, or Evo, it was Evo because Tekken was there. I think it's you know, it's also good of him to. I think it's smart of him to get out there and say, yeah, we're not there. We're not going to be there. Because otherwise you end up in this situation where people are expecting it and rumors, you know, because people have been like, I think even I've been in a position where I've been like, well, of course the NetherRealm game has to be announced this year sometime, right? Like, wouldn't it be here? I guess that we're running out of time, so maybe it's here and then it ships in April, right? That makes sense, right? And so as you have more and more of that speculation, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to be like, yeah, we're not, you know, just to put that in check right now, so you're not watching the whole show getting mad that the new Mortal Kombat wasn't there or something like that. Like, yeah, we're not gonna be there. But where will they be? When will NetherRealm announce another game? Because they just announced, what is it? The mobile game, that mobile Mortal Kombat game got announced. Like they're doing that, but yeah. And does this mean that, like, you know, did they get? I wonder, you know, because the talk was always like they were a little reluctant to do another Injustice because of the parent company situation, all the merger stuff, the Warner Brothers Discovery stuff, and for a while there was that desire. It seemed like that the parent company was very interested in selling off the game studios. And so that led to a lot of talk about like, well, wait a minute, like, okay, if NetherRealm gets sold off to, I don't know, Microsoft, no, not Microsoft now, they're going to be locked up in, you know, antitrust stuff over the Activision stuff for a long time. But, you know, this was before that. You know, whoever would end up being a likely suitor, a likely buyer for NetherRealm would not own the DC properties. So if you're making an Injustice game, do you then have to guarantee like, okay, we're also going to give you a license to these characters for this specific game because you're buying this studio while they're making a DC Universe game? Or do they just go like, oh, hey, since we don't know how this is going to shake out and we have no idea if we're going to end up part of the DC, you know, family of brands or not, it's safer for us to do something else. So all of the speculation then refocused around Mortal Kombat. Like, okay, they're not going to flip-flop between MK and Injustice this time. They're just going to make another MK. And so that became kind of the conventional wisdom around this stuff. It was like, okay, well, hey, that's, yeah, well, yeah, okay, yeah. And a Fat Scout in the chat and on the Discord kind of points it out that like, that they always assumed that if Warner tried to sell NetherRealm, they would have kept the IP with Warner Brothers and not sold the Mortal Kombat IP along with the studio. I think that's probably part of why some of these studios didn't sell in the first place. Because if you're just buying talent and you're not buying the IP, like, what are you paying for? You know, like you could just build a new studio and hire them away. You could go like, hey, hello, Ed Boon, Sean Hemrick. Why don't we talk? Why don't we set up shop across the street? And you can bring as many of you guys as you want, and we'll just start a new studio, and you guys can do a new thing, and it won't be Mortal Kombat. At that point, that would be cheaper than buying the studio, I would think. Maybe not. Maybe starting up from scratch, actually, you know, there's costs associated with that. But But that's not nearly as attractive. You know, if you're just buying the team and not actually getting the ability to make Mortal Kombat without having to go back to Warner every time and be like, hey, can we license this? You know, or you negotiate a 20-year license, or, you know, whatever it is, that's still not you owning the IP. And so if Warner wasn't willing to shake loose of the IP, then that's a much less attractive thing to purchase at that point. You know, unless you're going to go merge it with Studio Gigante and, you know, work on a Tao Fang 2, something nice like that. You know, who can say? But yeah, it's interesting because now you're just like, gosh, what are they gonna end up doing? You know? They're getting to a point where they probably need a new fighting game in the marketplace before too long here, just because the last one's getting a little long in the tooth, and, you know, the community needs to be fed. If you want Evo hype, if you want, you know, like if you want that train to keep rolling, you probably need, it's about time to support them with a new game. So, yeah, I don't know. But also, we'll have to see when Tekken's coming out, you know, because presumably, so they're going to run another cycle of the Street Fighter 6 closed beta, and I believe they are taking signups for that again. If you want to look that up and sign up for it, if you were in the previous round of the beta, you will still be in this one, so you don't need to sign up again. But they're going to run that, I think, in a week and a half, something like that, for that weekend, and then obviously Tekken is going to be there in some form. But like, presumably Street Fighter is out, you know, February, March, like something in that time frame, right? Like it's probably launching around then. They haven't given a date yet, but for them to have it for Evo, for them to have it for the, you know, the tournament infrastructure that's in place around that game, they probably need to get it out sometime in that window of like between like February and April or something like that. April, of course, is the month when NetherRealm has shipped the last couple of their games, at least. Last handful, they've staked out April pretty well. Every other April was them for a while. And then we'll see what happens with Tekken. Is Tekken further along than you think? Is Tekken suddenly going to be like right around the corner, or is Tekken like a holiday game? I don't think we know, but hopefully we'll have a better line on that this week. And so, yeah, you do have a situation where you're like, okay, that's a lot of fighting games suddenly hitting. Is it worth it for one of them, like Mortal Kombat, to kind of hang back a little bit and see when everyone else is shipping? I don't know. Especially because Mortal Kombat sells really well because there are a lot of Mortal Kombat fans who aren't even necessarily fans of competitive fighting events, esports, all that other stuff. So yeah, I'm guessing that we'll see over the next month or so, we'll probably see the Street Fighter date hit, and I bet that date will be, I bet that date will end up being Q1, you know, February, maybe March. And then I would have expected NetherRealm to be hitting in April, and then I would expect Tekken to end up being end of the year or something like that. Tekken just feels further off. Maybe they're bluffing and they're just like, by the way, it's done. You know, something completely insane like that. Maybe they ship it January, you know, but like then you've stacked up a lot of fighting games there. You've got Project L coming along. They just put out Riot just put out another video yesterday showing off some of their progress on that. So that's coming. And that could be very disruptive because of the popularity of League, but we'll see. I'll be very curious to see their netcode and how that stuff goes. That'll be very interesting to see, you know, a company like Riot that has been so built on like figuring out its internet, its own separate internet, its, you know, dark fiber, like all the other stuff that they've done in order to make League work. And then you've got a fighting game and you've got the cannons involved, like all that sort of stuff. You're like, okay, well, clearly this will have to have probably, I mean, will this have the best net code of any fighting game ever released? It's certainly possible with the minds and the money behind it. Like, that could be crazy. We'll see what that ends up looking like. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that ends up going. That's but because that's like it's Dark Horse feels like a weird way to put it, but since it is not an established fighting game franchise, it still does feel like this outsider. But when you've got the muscle of Riot and the muscle of League of Legends behind something like that, like, is that thing just going to launch and suddenly instantly be the biggest fighting game on the planet? Even if it's bad, will it have this sudden, like, oh, well, everyone loves League, so they're just going to gravitate towards this for a while. Even if it ends up falling off, it's gonna have its day, one way or the other, right? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Gosh, this story, I don't. They're gonna make a ToeJam and Earl movie. Some people are saying that they are looking to make a ToeJam and Earl movie. This is according to The Hollywood Reporter. And Amazon Studios is teaming up with a company called Story Kitchen and another company called Unanimous Media. And basketball's own Steph Curry is one of the producers, I guess, at Unanimous Media. So Steph Curry is making a ToeJam and Earl movie. Somehow. I don't know. This is so what, gosh, this is Hollywood Reporter has a synopsis here. Earth, their legends tell them, is the paradise where the music that created their culture originated. Unfortunately for our heroes, not only do they wreck their ship, but they find that Earth is, well, not the haven they expected. But the music, that part was true. So begins their quest to find as much of that music as they can in the hope of saving their planet and maybe ours as well. Because I guess the Funkotron, the planet, has a disease that is eradicating the home planet's rhythm, funk, and groove. So I guess they've got to go to Earth and steal a bunch of hip hop. And okay, I'm just going to write a scene from this movie now. Well, let's hang on. Let's read on here. Amos Vernon and Nunzio Randazzo, the writers behind Hotel Transylvania 4 and the upcoming Disney Plus Super Fudge series, will pen the screenplay. Story Kitchen's Dimitri Johnson and Dan Jevons, who is affiliated with Sonic the Hedgehog, will produce. Yeah, not too many more details there. All right, so it just says it's in the works as a feature film. It doesn't say anything about it being an animated movie. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this ends up being sort of Sonic the Hedgehog-esque in that there are real humans interacting with ToeJam and Earl. And as such, and maybe this is a joke. Did they do this joke in the Men in Black franchise already? Maybe they did. But I'm just going to say, at some point, they're going to run into Bootsy Collins, and it's going to turn out that Bootsy Collins is an alien from their planet, and he's been hiding among the Earthlings for all this time. That is one. That I'm going to say that is 100. That's 200% a scene in that film. That will absolutely happen. And if they're writing it right now. So if you heard that, give me a writing credit. Let me get health insurance on the. Let me get movie screenwriters health insurance. Is that how that works? I don't know if that's how that works. I love ToeJam and Earl 1. I love the first ToeJam and Earl game. It's awesome. It's a great roguelite. Maybe the first roguelite you were ever exposed to. And just a great game. The sequel, the side-scrolling sequel, disappointing. Not a good game. That third game that eventually came out on Xbox, where they had to change builds at the last minute because they had a boss in it that looked like he was wearing clan robes. Oof. Not a great game. That most recent one they put out, where they're kind of like, oh, let's take it back to a lot of the stuff from the first game. Like, yeah, yeah. But I would probably still rather play that first game. So I don't know. Like, this is such a crazy thing. Like, if you told me back then, like, oh, by the way, they're going to make a ToeJam and Earl movie, I'd be like, fuck you. No, they're fucking not. And even still now, like, now that this story is out there and they're announcing this, I'm like, yeah, that's never gonna fucking come out. But actually, in the wake of Sonic the Hedgehog, it feels like more of this stuff is going to eventually make it to some screen somewhere. And since Amazon's involved, presumably this ends up on their streaming service and is not something that necessarily is going to theaters, but we'll see. Maybe it'll get some kind of theatrical release along with that. Because obviously, like, Sega is, well, so I don't know. I don't know how much involvement Sega would have with this, because I think the rights to ToeJam and Earl eventually reverted to the creators, Greg Johnson and Mark Vor. Oh, it's here in the story. Vorsanger. So yeah, the success of Sonic the Hedgehog in theaters feels like it led to a lot of this land rush around, Space Channel 5. I can't tell if this was bullshit or not, because it was just something that scrolled by. But was there a photo of a photo from the Tetris movie earlier this week? Was there like, here's a shot from the set of the Tetris film? Which I guess is, now that that's not like big lines falling from space or anything like that. That is actually a documentary or I guess a docudrama or whatever about the IP rights of Tetris. So that's much more likely to actually happen now that it's not like, the pieces are falling out of the sky. What are we going to do? Or whatever they were. Whatever. I feel like 20 years ago, whenever there was like some talk about Tetris movie or whatever it was. Last little bit of news here. The push and pull over the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard King has ratcheted up a little bit over the last week, where you've had a lot of people indicating certain things in an unofficial way, where like, the U.S., the FTC is going to look into this, and they're indicating that maybe they would like to see some concessions rather than having to take this to court. And then Microsoft indicating that they'd be willing to make some concessions to make this work. And so it's a lot of people going like, we're going to wink at you and say, we will approve this deal, but you need to make some changes. But we can't really say that to you without doing a full investigation. But this investigation maybe doesn't even have to happen if you just do the thing that you're obviously going to do anyway. And so it's not necessarily a paid situation. I don't, this is just like a, hey, we understand that you would be willing to go to, Microsoft said as much, that they would be willing to go to court over this if it got that way. And I think that led to the situation to be like, well, maybe it doesn't have to go to court if you just fucking, figure something out here to, because as is, we're probably going to, take you to the mat over it. Anyway, Microsoft has officially confirmed the details, according to Video Games Chronicle, about its, and it's said this all along, but so this is kind of, it's looking to make it official. The 10-year deal for the next 10 years, they would offer Call of Duty on PlayStation day and date with Xbox and also other platforms from the sounds of things. and that they feel, so this is, what is this? This is this comes from an op-ed. That's a really weird. So this comes from the president of Microsoft, Brad Smith, who wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, wherein he kind of lays out some of this stuff and basically is making the case for, like, here's why this is good for players. That's a really weird. I don't think I fully realized that this just came from like an opinion article that he wrote for the Wall Street Journal and not from actual reporting. So there's some quotes in here. That's a paywall article. Some quotes in the Video Games Chronicle article. Sony has emerged as the loudest objector. It's as excited about this deal as Blockbuster was about the rise of Netflix. The main supposed potential anti-competitive risk Sony raises is that Microsoft would stop making Call of Duty available on the PlayStation, but that would be economically irrational. A vital part of Activision Blizzard's Call of Duty revenue comes from PlayStation game sales. Given the popularity of crossplay, it would also be disastrous to the Call of Duty franchise and Xbox itself, alienating millions of gamers. That's why we've offered Sony a 10-year contract to make each new Call of Duty release available on PlayStation the same day it comes to Xbox. We're open to providing the same commitment to other platforms and making it legally enforceable by regulators in the US, UK, and European Union. Smith said that suing Microsoft in an attempt to stop the acquisition, quote, would be a huge mistake and would stifle competition and negatively impact consumers and game developers. And that this, Smith also goes on to say that the deal would enable Microsoft to compete against the likes of Apple and Google, which currently dominate the mobile gaming space. So they're trying to position this as like the thing they really care about is King and the, you know, Candy Crush money and all that mobile stuff. And that Call of Duty is, you know, matters, but is not necessarily that. This is more them trying to get a firmer foothold in the mobile space. Maybe the numbers pan out in a way that that make sense, but the conclusion. So yeah, the last sentence here, according to Video Games Chronicle, is from Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, is, think about how much better it is to stream a movie from your couch than drive to Blockbuster. We want to bring the same sort of innovation to the video game industry. That's a weird. Like, I get what they're going for there, but I don't know. That just, I don't know. Something about that sits weird with me. But you know, but they're positioning that this is really primarily about getting the makers of Candy Crush, and acquiring Activision Blizzard would enable Microsoft to compete against these companies through innovation that would benefit consumers. While modern consumers can stream videos or music on multiple devices on low-cost subscription plans, mini games can often only be individually purchased and downloaded onto one device. Microsoft wants to change that by offering consumers the option to subscribe to a cloud gaming service that lets them stream a variety of games on multiple devices for one reasonable fee. It would also benefit developers by allowing them to reach a much broader audience. So I don't know. You know, I've maintained that, you know, the whole, like, that Sony, the way Sony is framing this argument about Call of Duty has always seemed like it, like, just not true. It is like that they are trying to hype this up into a much bigger deal than it is. And in order to try to get what they could out of it and try to make this as beneficial to them, I guess, as possible. But then this opinion article is very much about cloud gaming and all this other stuff that, like, you know, Candy Crush, you know, it'll run. It'll run locally on a lot of devices. You don't necessarily need to have Candy Crush running in the cloud. But yeah, it's yeah, so I don't know. This 10-year deal, you know, getting out there and making it public and making it official and stuff like that probably helps make them look like that they're willing to deal. And, you know, it sounds like Sony has maybe already tried to turn that down and say it's not enough. But like that, turning that down and saying it's not enough also just sounds very unreasonable to me. And I want, like I said last time we talked about this, I wonder if this ends up if Sony really does create a big enough stink, then you end up in a scenario where, does Microsoft have to try to say, oh, well, I guess we won't put Call of Duty on Game Pass? Is that fair now? Which Sony would probably jump at the chance for that, at a chance to disrupt Game Pass to such a degree. But I don't know. I feel like if I were a Call of Duty owning Microsoft in that scenario where they said, oh, okay, it can't be on Game Pass, and that somehow that ended up being the deal of like, oh, well, we can't put it on Game Pass anymore, I would try to just make that game completely free to play. Because I mean, look at it, like, think about Call of Duty, the premium product. It still sells very well. Obviously, it's still a huge seller. But like the long tail, all the money, like all that other stuff, like all the interest, even now, is around Warzone, which is free. So at some point, you just go like, oh, well, to get around this part of this ruling, we're just going to make Call of Duty free. And, we'll sell our $20 campaign. Like maybe that's what finally gets the campaign broken out and sold separately or something like that. If they want to find ways to really fuck this thing up and really mess around with it, maybe you could go down that road. I don't know. It's weird. It's a whole weird thing, but we'll see where that ends up, I suppose. Because now that, the US will have to weigh in on it at some point, because they haven't really had much to say about it yet. It's all been in the EU and a little bit of the UK, and then, Brazil and I think Argentina. Like a lot of places have ruled on it and been like, yeah, that's fine. We're cool with it. Like no one has demanded any changes yet. So these seem like the ones that are going to be a little bit more difficult. So they're going to have to make some concessions, but it still sounds like this deal gets done. It doesn't sound like that this leads to a situation where like, oh, we can't merge after all. Like I would be shocked if it ended up that way. Like Microsoft ends up owning all of this stuff eventually. They probably will just have to jump through a handful of more hoops to make it work. Which is probably for the best. Everyone should get stuff. Everyone should get more stuff. I don't know that I feel that necessarily like Sony should be the primary beneficiary of this of these dealings, but because again, I don't think that like the stuff that Sony is fighting for, Microsoft would not take Call of Duty off the PlayStation. It just doesn't make sense for what the Call of Duty business model actually is. So like they're making a stink about a scenario that is highly unlikely to begin with, just to fuck with it. Really, because it's not like they're, what are they asking for that would truly benefit them and would benefit PlayStation players? Really, keeping it off of Game Pass doesn't benefit PlayStation players. You know what I mean? Like that's something that just like, oh, well, it fucks over Microsoft's thing and helps our bottom line because it means that whatever people that we're going to make the jump to Xbox for this won't go if it's still $70 everywhere, $90, whatever. That's not something that's better for consumers. Like you can't spin that as a pro-consumer sort of like pro-competition sort of thing. It doesn't, like that doesn't make sense to me. So that Sony has offered nothing in the way of like, why would this be better for PlayStation players given the scenario that Microsoft is like again and again saying like, dude, we're super not doing that. Yeah, we're like just like Minecraft is available in a lot of places. Yeah, Call of Duty will be we'll put Call of Duty places because that's how people play Call of Duty. Microsoft's whole thing has been how can we put games in more places? So fuck it. Yeah, I know. Like that the Microsoft attitude seems to be one of fuck it. And Sony is trying to make it seem like a much bigger deal than that. If Infinity Ward came up with a brand new franchise, much like Bethesda has done with Starfield or something like that, I would not expect that to be multi-platform. And I think that makes total sense. And I don't think that's a problem in any way, but for some of these like legacy franchises that have appeared on all these platforms and are still incredibly popular, it makes a ton of sense to keep doing that way. So we'll see how all that shakes out. Anyway, that's it for the news. We're going to get into some emails right now. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Hook me up with some emails and I will, I will read some of them on the program. So let me go to that and see what we've got. John writes in, I'm sorry, what do we have here? No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Danny from Colchester in the UK writes in and says, long-time listener, first-time emailer, had a weird thought cross my mind and wanted your opinion on it. This kind of all in a weird way ties into some of the Need for Speed discussion. If I'm ever watching streams or anything, I noticed everyone says, let's go, whenever hyped or excited. I find it super cringy. Has there ever been anything that everyone does that annoys you too? Or am I just a grumpy asshole and have finally reached the age where other people's excitement annoys me? I am with you to an extent where I think that the way people say let's go, especially like they have just won something, right? Where they have won a match of Warzone, for example, and the thing they say is let's go. It's like, motherfucker, you already went. You won. It's done. But whatever. That's slang, right? It's always fucking insane shit. Yeah, it is something that it does not line up with me in a like when I hear it, it definitely sticks out a little bit and I go like, oh yeah. And I think that is just it's I guess it's an age thing to a certain extent, but like, slang is always changing. And that stuff is always incredibly fluid and it might be gone in 6 months. Or it might stick around for 10 years or something like that. It's, I really found the term dope to be stupid and abrasive when people first started saying it. This is quite a long time ago, and I was, I don't know, my early 20s or something like that at that point. There was something about just like, yeah, dope. I was like, I hate it. But it stuck around, and eventually it's one of those things, like a lot of things, you say it ironically long enough, eventually you just start saying it. Like sick was another one of just like, okay, that's not like the kids are on some other shit when they started saying sick, and I'm like, I'm not interested in that. And I was like probably 25 or something like that at that point. And sick went away and then came back again somehow. And at some point, it's just one of those things like it's just one of those things like, oh, sick. Where you kind of say it ironically often enough and then suddenly you find it's just coming out of your mouth for real. And, that that happened to me. Fat Scout says, when I was in high school, dank became the word. Yeah, dank is a stupid. Remember when David Letterman had that fucking stoner on his show? Like he was in San Francisco for the week or whatever and had that guy on, and the guy kept saying that everything was diggity dank. And it was like the first time that term had been brought to like a nation, but also a nation, the demographic of a nation that was never going to encounter that term any other way than through David Letterman. And so of course they like had huge scorn for it and all this other stuff. Yeah. Jimmy in the chat says everything is cringe and everyone is embarrassing. That's totally, yes, that's exactly right. And that's fine. Language changes. Language is very fluid, and all that sort of stuff is just going to keep happening, whether you like it or not. And so I think at some point you just have to kind of come to terms with that. And some lingo will hit you like that forever, and you will always go like cringe is a great example for me, where like when people say something is cringe, I go like, man, fuck you, fuck that. That's just ugh. Like I have a visceral reaction to cringe as a noun. And the overuse of it in situations where it just really doesn't apply. I think that's kind of the other one. But like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like my statement that like the people always say let's go when they're at the end of something, and that's dumb. Like that might as well be saying like, all these kids are wearing their hats backwards. Like it's basically the same complaint, right? Like it's just whatever. Like that stuff just, like I said, language happens. Some language is eternal, and some of it is also highly geographical, you know? And there are people, you know, and this used to just be a NorCal, SoCal thing, but the term hella was very looked down upon for a long time. I also, when hella first came around in the 90s, I was not for it. And then I started hanging out with Ryan McDonald, who hella said hella. And it just, like, stuff like that rubs off on you. You know, you're around a person for a length of time, like that sort of stuff just, I think that stuff just starts to happen naturally. And I now love, and I think it's lost some of that regionality a little bit, but there is something in a classic sense where now, like, I feel like this undercover agent living in Southern California as someone who says hella a lot. And to some people, they will hear it and they will know exactly like, oh, you're not from here. You're from up north. We need to fight. I'm a Dodgers fan and we need to fight, or whatever it is. And, but also I think hella spread a lot and has kind of come back and went away again. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, language is super fluid. And it's one of the fun things about it, I think, is, you know, even just like your pockets of friends can come up with their own stupid shit. And it's the way, you know, like we were, oh man, I don't know. We were, you know, the mid-aughts, I think we just started going off the rails and just making up shit at every turn. And it almost expanded. It was at the point where, like, you know, me and 3 other people knew what we were talking about. And you would say stuff like, oh, that's Pandas Chanandas. And like, they were like, what is that? What the fuck is that? Like, and, you know, and I could sit there and explain, well, okay. So it's bananas, but it's 99 bananas. And then it's 99. There's like a long, like 9 different like, you know, it just like that stuff ended up going through 9 different phases until it started coming out of us saying like, it's Pandas Chanandas indeed. And knowing exactly what that meant and why. But yeah, I don't know. Like the internet has disrupted a lot of the regionality of slang and all that. Like I'm certainly no slang expert. I'm sure there's like linguists that have like very careful, like, well, this happened here, and then this person started saying this on a stream, and then it took off this way, and you know how, like, is there. I think the way people use the term based these days is really weird to me. When we think about Lil B and all that sort of stuff, I think that the kind of constant flow of slang from kind of the slang from hip hop making its way into gaming has always been a really weird one. When people started playing World of Warcraft and started talking about ganking someone and having no idea who Eazy-E was, really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, Eazy-E, that man is on the gank right there. And there was just like, there was something about the way that happened that just really felt really fucking wrong to me. And Yeah, I don't know. And now there's a, because so many of us are typing, there's just a bunch of slang that really wasn't meant to be said out loud. And then you've got people that are now saying it out loud. And poggers, of course. At least poggers is pronounceable. And I think that that's fine. Well, it's all fine. Like, whatever. Like I said, like, people are coming about it naturally. Like, people are coming about their slang, like the language naturally evolves and people pick that stuff up. I think that's totally fine. But I heard someone say keck out loud the other day, and I was like, you're like that. Also, I think that term makes you seem like a scumbag immediately because of its kind of legacy. But saying it out loud is just like, oh, you're like doubling down on fucking some real stupid shit. Like, that's fucking, yeah. Go crawl back under your rock, dirtbag. Like, fuck that shit. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to watch that language evolve and all that sort of stuff. So it's yeah, the let's go thing, whatever. I think I think the answer you have to have for all of that stuff after, maybe you let it initially kind of rub you the wrong way and be like, ugh. Ooh. These fucking people, what's wrong with them? Why are they talking like this? This is bullshit. But I think you eventually just have to go like, that's just how it's going to be. And it's not, and in this day and age, I think it's not necessarily something that only happens because of your age. I think a lot of people go like, oh, I'm an old man now, so the slang, like, yeah, but also that the language is changing in front of us all the time for a lot of different reasons. And I think at some point you just kind of need to go like, yep, and that's a natural evolution and it's okay for that to happen. There were some people that were like really confused by the like, daddy-o, you're the most, or whatever, 50s fucking horse shit that we should bring all that garbage back, right? Like that should always just seem like the corniest shit. But like for me right now, the thing is like, yeah, when people say emote names out loud, I caught that the other night and had a lengthy conversation with some people on another Discord about it. Just some real, just some proper Roy's boys about some of that stuff. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't like it. I understand why it's happening, I guess now after we've talked this out, but like, ugh. Like something about that still really, there's something about bringing internet shit into the real world, which is dumb because at the end of the day, the internet is the real world. It's not two separate fucking things. But there's just something about bringing that off a screen into the real world and speaking it in a way that just goes like, ugh, it just feels gross. It just doesn't it feels like, it just feels fucking bad. He's like, oh God, I don't like this. And I don't think you necessarily have to be, I don't think it's necessarily always an age thing is my point. That's something that's going to continue happening for a variety of reasons to a variety of people at a variety of age ranges and all that other stuff. So I do feel at some point, a lot of my, I started saying rad a lot again. I went away from it for a long time and it came back. And now it's just kind of stuck on me. And I think I'm just going to talk like that for the rest of my life, And yeah, I don't know. That's just how it goes sometimes, I guess. Let's see. Adder from Chicago writes in and says, hope you're well. I was wondering when or if you plan on introducing ska music to your children. And if so, what would you consider child-friendly ska music? I imagine they won't be listening to any Real Big Fish anytime soon. I think a lot of ska. I would not have a problem with listening to "Sell Out" by Real Big Fish with my kids. The Aquabats are right there, of course. Yeah, the Agra lights, sure, why not? Yeah, I don't know. There's I'm sure that there's plenty of ska that is inappropriate for children lyrically or whatever, but like by and large, I don't know. I feel like there's plenty of it that would be absolutely fine. I don't think you need to always listen to kids music. My daughter listens to kids music. She listens to Raffi. She wants to listen to the Frozen soundtrack sometimes. And that's about it. For a while, I was playing her hot hits like Party Rock Anthem by LMFAO. When she was too young to even understand what we would watch the music video, and she would be too young to understand what was even happening on the screen, but she would still kind of fixate on it. She'd sit on my lap and I put it on and she would pay attention to it. But yeah, I don't know. We listen to some, sometimes when it's time to exercise, when she wants me to do exercises with her, I'll put on the Venga Boys and she'll like Up and Down by the Venga Boys. Not that that's ska, but I'm just saying, like, she largely just listens to children's music or largely requests children's music, I guess I should say. But if it was up to me, we'd be playing the Venga Boys all day long. Let's see here. This one came in unsigned. Recently, a YouTube video hit piece, hit pieces, came out about Tommy Tallarico and Roblox called Roblox_oof.mp3, which I'll say now, I still have not watched it. I loaded it up at one point and then got distracted and didn't get through it. But, there was actually, we talk a little bit about Tommy on the upcoming episode of Game Boys to Men, as Glenn has the same memory of Tommy Tallarico on the show floor at CES and E3 as I do. Yeah, hit. I don't think hit piece is the right word for that. That's anyway. The email goes on. I liked Tommy growing up, watching him on the Electric Playground TV show, but the more I know of Tommy, the less I like him. I always had a feeling that folks in the gaming industry disliked him, but I always brushed it off because of my love for Tommy. But since this whole debacle with the Intellivision and now this video quasi expose, I just don't like him anymore. Have you ever interacted with Tommy previously? Have you ever had this happen to you about a person or hero, and when confronted with new information have had to dismiss that person, or do you still like them? I am sure that I have had some conversation with Tommy Tallarico in the past. Like, that we were at enough of the same events or something that I'm sure I must have spoken to him at one point, but I don't really remember ever talking to him at length or anything like that. Victor Lucas, who, runs Electric Playground, talked to him a lot. He's a great guy. He's awesome. But yeah, the thing, and the Tommy Tallarico thing with me, and this is, we talk about this on the, Glenn and I go over this on the upcoming episode of Game Boys to Men, which should be out this week over at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. But we both have the same memory of Tommy walking around the show floor dressed up like Prince or something with like this long cape and a bunch of women standing around, like walking with him in formation, and just how insane that seemed. And at the time I was like, I don't even know who this guy is. Like, what is going on? Who is this person that is doing this? And someone had to be like, oh, he's Tommy Tallarico. He does music for some games. This might have been before Electric Playground was a thing. I don't know for sure, but it was the sort of thing. It was like, that's my first memory of that dude, is him walking around the show floor with, again, like a box of women around him, or people holding the cape or whatever it is, and just seeing that and being like, what the fuck? And so everything after that was always like, oh, that's the guy that did the thing with the cake. You're like, oh, okay, all right. But yeah, I don't know him. I don't know him super well. Again, I'm sure I've been in the same places he has a lot over the years, and I'm sure we have had a conversation or two over those years. But I don't know. I don't know for certain. And the thing that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way as a game reviewer, as someone who tried to take reviews very seriously, was the notion that someone who worked on games, who did music for games, was also put in a position to be reviewing games. That always struck me as all the way wrong. I was like, wait a minute. Because that's a conflict of interest on all angles, right? That's like, you've got the games that he worked on, but then there are the things we don't know about, where like maybe he pitched his services to a game and they said no. And what about that? What happened there? And so I always had a real problem with that. And it felt like that they didn't necessarily always disclose that stuff as much as they should. Electric Playground was on Canadian television at the time. And so we didn't really have ready access to it until I guess it was on G4 at some point. So I don't know that I saw all of his stuff. I know occasionally they would point out like, hey, he did the music for this and his company worked on this aspect of the soundtrack or whatever. But that was something that always really rubbed me the wrong way, and always just felt like, okay, this feels like it is disqualifying as a reviewer. Like, you should not be in this situation where you're talking about this game and telling people if it's good or not. It always just, that part of it just always struck me as strange. But no, I never really had any memorable interactions with him other than just seeing him from a distance all dressed up like that and just being like, what is, and again, that was the first time I ever saw him. And that was like, like one of the, I was still relatively new in the game business at that point. And so seeing that was just like, what is going on? Why? What? Yeah, I don't know. That always just struck me as strange. But yeah, like Glenn and I talk about it a little bit more on the upcoming episode of Game Boys to Men. So check that out on the Patreon. Should be up later this week. Aaron in Connecticut says, I was glancing at the product page for Midnight Suns on the Xbox and PlayStation 5, and none of the screenshots or trailers give any indication that this is a card-based strategy game. Obviously, there are hints if you know Firaxis and if you read deeper into the description, but it kind of seems like they're trying to hide the actual gameplay. I think that's fucked up. That's fucked up, right? Says Aaron. I will say that I, at one point, knew that it was a card-based strategy game and had completely forgotten that it was by the time it came out. And it wasn't until I downloaded it and installed it and started running it and got to the tutorial, and then the combat popped up and it was like a row of cards popped up at the bottom, that I was like, oh, fuck. It reminds me of Brutal Legend in a way. EA felt like they were trying to hide the like real-time strategy nature of Brutal Legend as long as they could. And I still remember having that conversation with an excitable British man at GDC who had just come from an internal EA presentation where they showed Brutal Legend and a bunch of other stuff. Before they hadn't really showed Brutal Legend off very much. And he said, it's an RTS. The game's an RTS. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like The Legend of Zelda, but heavy metal, right? I mean, I just see Jack Black running around in a jean jacket hitting dudes with guitars, right? I mean, it's like an Ocarina of Time kind of thing. It's a fucking RTS. And I was like, what? And yeah, it's a fucking RTS. Which is a neat idea, but I can understand why they didn't. I can understand why they didn't want to like lead with that and show a lot of that, because It would be off-putting. But also, I think that aspect of the game makes that game super off-putting. So not showing that stuff ahead of release in the case of Brutal Legend always struck me as a little deceptive. But maybe that feels different if you really ended up liking that RTS stuff. But for me, I played a lot of that game, and then it started throwing more and more of that stuff in my face, and I was like, I hate this. Like, I do not enjoy playing this at all. I was really liking this game right up until this second, and now I am as turned around on it as a person could be. And I don't know. I have not seen enough of the Midnight Suns marketing to know one way or the other, so I can only speak to my personal, knowledge there. Where, like, again, someone super early on told me that game was a card game, but I just wasn't keeping tabs on Midnight Suns, so I completely forgot. So all I remembered about that game was like, it's from Firaxis, but it's not just an XCOM game. And I was like, well, okay, but it's still from Firaxis, and so hopefully it's got some of that XCOM in there, and I don't know, that still sounds pretty cool. And then loading it up and seeing what it is and going like, oh, right. Yeah, right. False advertising is maybe a strong word in the case of Midnight Suns, but well, maybe not. I don't know. I'd have to go look at the material and see what they really did put out there for trailers and all that sort of stuff. Maybe they really did try to hide it for as long as they could. Which, that's uncool. Plasma 777 writes in and says, recently on the podcast, you brought up the mixed soda flavors you can get from a freestyle Coke machine, and I wanted to put my 2 cents in and suggest that people at least try vanilla Sprite. It sounds like an odd combo, and it probably is, but even weirder is that it tastes eerily like Fruit Loops for some reason. Or that it tastes like Fruit Loops for reasons I don't want to know. That is weird. Vanilla Sprite sounds okay, but like Fruit Loops, Fruit Loops are okay. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. But the citrus and the vanilla, that makes sense. Let's see here. Ryan from Lincoln, New England. Is any Nebraska? Man, I just totally went up on that. I'm like, yeah, New England. No, it's not a fucking state, you dumbass. Anyway, Ryan writes in from somewhere, Lincoln somewhere. I grew up playing PC games in the 80s and 90s, and pretty much everything I played was made for DOS until around the Windows 95 era. Thinking back on that time, what are some DOS games from that era that you remember looking especially good, either technically or aesthetically? I remember being pretty blown away by id's games, of course, and the art style in the LucasArts games were generally very charming. Are there any games you can think of that maybe aren't as well known that stand out to you visually? I mean, yes, Wolfenstein and Doom obviously ran super well and looked great. I loved, Syndicate on the PC. I played a ton of that. I think the aesthetics, the look, the vibe of the original Syndicate and the voice word, the little like selected, like that stuff, I think is really great. And I might say Magic Carpet. I remember at the time Magic Carpet being a really mind-blowing visual experience in terms of how it ran and the how well it ran and all of that sort of stuff, depending if you had enough of a PC for it, of course. Magic Carpet still looks kind of cool today, honestly. I like the look of Abuse, which is the side scroller. I like I like the art style of it quite a bit. I'm trying to think DOS era games because I got my first PC in 1992, and that was before Windows 95 was a thing. But I was also running Windows 95 super early. The magazine I worked for in 94. They got a build of Windows 95 back when it was still called whatever. I always forget what the, like, it doesn't say Windows 95 on the package or on the OS itself. It says, it's not Whistler. It's, anyway, whatever the code name for Windows 95 was. I was running that for a good long time, prior to Windows 95 coming out. And, it's on like 30 floppies. And I got this big old, I should dig that out at some point. I don't know what I'd do with it in this day and age. Chicago? Yeah, Chicago. I think it is Chicago. I think you're right. One Must Fall 2097 is a great looking game aesthetically. It's a fun fighting game. It's not the most balanced thing in the world, but it's kind of cool to come back to after all these years. And it doesn't run great in DOSBox. When I was streaming that stuff not that long ago, it's like, it's a little difficult to get running properly in this day and age. The automatic DOSBox stuff doesn't handle it quite as well. The home ports of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, and to a lesser extent 3, were also really awesome on the PC in DOS. Like those DOS versions of MK were really great. They were probably the best versions of the game, even though you only had a 4-button controller, and so the punch buttons got combined into one button. It still looked awesome, and sounded awesome. Like the digital audio, the samples, the voice work, like all that stuff was there, and all sounded really great. Jazz Jackrabbit was a killer game. It just moved so well for the era in a surprising kind of way. And I had really good art and stuff for that type of game. What else, man? I played a lot of weird, shitty DOS games. Smashing pumpkins into putrid, SPISPOPD, smashing pumpkins into piles of putrid debris. I think that's what it was. Which is a shitty little pumpkin smashing game. Halloween Harry was a fun little side scroller. Epic Pinball. There's some good. Yeah, Epic Pinball is really great. Terminal Velocity. That's a good one. Yeah, that Terminal Velocity looked technically very impressive for its day. Yeah, there was a lot of, Space Hulk. I played quite a lot of Space Hulk. There was the Dark Sun games, the D&D games. Was it like Shattered Lands? No. The first Dark Sun game, I played quite a lot of that too. And yeah, then Windows 95 came out and everything got weird for a while because you weren't sure how to run some games, because some games wouldn't run well under Windows, and so you could still drop to DOS out of Windows 95 and get to effectively a DOS prompt and still run those games there. And some games would run just fine under Windows 95. And so that's when you had like, oh, well, we're putting out an updated version. Like there was like, Command and Conquer came out originally as Command and Conquer is a good one. That originally came out as a DOS game. And then they came out with CNC 95, specifically built to run on Windows 95. The game didn't look, that much better or different or anything like that. It just ran under Windows 95, which was nice. And the Command and Conquer, the aesthetics of Command and Conquer are probably best realized by its installer. And that's something that they did that recent re-release of that Command and Conquer collection that's on Steam now. And they kind of recreated those installers a little bit. They're not one-to-one exact recreations because it's widescreen, all this other stuff. And it's not installing from fucking CD-ROMs or whatever. But they kind of recreated that installer for that collection. And it's a great attention. Like it's great little detail that it's awesome that they included in that collection that helps make that collection stand out and feel like, oh man, like people who really care about Command & Conquer worked on this because they knew they had to represent the installers in some way. And that's great. Crusader, No Remorse and No Regret. Those are awesome games. I love the look of those games even today. But yeah, those are, I could go look at like I have a DOS directory on of stuff that I would occasionally run with DOSBox. Let's go look at it real quick and see what else is in there. Because you can go grab that ExoDOS collection now. It's gigabytes and gigabytes of DOS games. But it's not always easy to run that stuff. Oh, where hang on. It's over here. Comanche. That game had voxels. You flew around a helicopter. That was a good one. Blackthorn came out on a lot of platforms. Day of the Tentacle. I like Dune 2. And then Dune 2000. Ken's Labyrinth is a good, weird first-person shootery kind of thing. I liked Rise of the Triad. Fighting games were hard to come by on the PC in that era, but you had stuff like Sango Fighter 2, and of course the Mortal Kombat ports were quite good. I liked Tyrion 2000 and Raptor Call of the Shadows for your kind of scrolling shooters. X-Wing and TIE Fighter, of course. What was there was it was like a Mario Kart like game that had Duke Nukem in it. Not Speed Demons. What was that called? Death Rally. Death Rally was pretty good for that type of like driving game and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Tech War. Tech War is a disaster of a video game. It's actually pretty terrible, but it does some stuff that's like kind of interesting when you really realize what Tech War is doing. It's kind of neat. And we'll make this the last one maybe here. Andy wrote in and said, watching your stream of Need for Speed Unbound, and I was wondering, why do all modern arcade racers seem to be riddled with a boardroom suits idea of youth culture or street culture? It seems most egregious in every Need for Speed since the start of the PS4 generation and Forza Horizon's festival influencers, but also seems present in the crew. Is it just me, or does all of this seem really out of touch, or am I just old? If they made the first Fast and Furious now, would Vin Diesel constantly be checking his phone to see how many likes his crew got after a race? Actually, maybe I am out of touch. What would you like to replace it? Yes, if they made Fast and Furious now, it would, yes, obviously it would be influenced by modern culture in ways that would probably, we recorded this sick burnout video for TikTok and now here it is, or, whatever. And so, that's the thing I'm kind of like trying to figure out. And, I don't know who to ask. But like, I think there's a real thing of just like, you would need to find someone like, who is the age appropriate person to truly judge that aspect of Need for Speed Unbound? Because I agree with you, but a lot of my stuff is about the line reads themselves than about the lingo. But also I would look at it and like, there's a part of me that says like they put ASAP Rocky in that game. And there's a part of me that's just like, that would have been way cooler 5 years ago. And is ASAP Rocky actually all that relevant these days? Because it seems like that time kind of passed to me. But I don't know. Like, do people still fucking love ASAP Rocky? I actually don't know. So that's the part of it for me that I look at it and go like, yeah, this whole thing feels a little bit off to me. And it feels like old. But then Need for Speed has been in development for kind of a long time. So were these calls they made at an earlier time when maybe that was a little bit less of a thing? When like when ASAP Rocky was maybe a little bit more relevant. But again, I don't feel like I'm the person to even judge ASAP Rocky's relevance anymore, because I just don't know if people are into him. But he hasn't. I feel like, when was the last time he fucking put something out? Like it doesn't feel like, it just doesn't feel like he's been putting out a ton of stuff. Oh, he's on West Side Gun's new album. All right, okay. Well, there's that, but should have put West Side Gun in that game. What? What if the new Need for Speed was just a fucking Griselda video game? You know? But Small Rewarder on the Discord brings up a good point also. Like, what even is car culture now? I don't know. I'm so not attached to modern car culture, and I don't know what that is. I know people are still out there fucking lowering their cars and fucking taking their steering wheels with them when they get out of their car. Like that tuner culture still exists. And people are still fucking building fast cars and doing cool shit. And they're getting their right-hand drive cars fucking imported and doing dumb shit, and I love it. But like car culture and tuner culture and all that sort of stuff doesn't feel like it's kind of the same as it used to. And that 2015 Need for Speed game felt like it was trying to address that by trying to take on like, okay, we've come up with like 4 different definitions of car culture. We've got the outlaw over here that loves to do illegal stuff, and we've got the drifters here, and we've got the people building weird muscle cars and doing quarter miles here, and basically trying to come up with the different disciplines, and here's Ken Block with his Gymkhana horse shit, and all of that. So like it felt like they tried to, but it feels like that stuff spread out in a way, and it doesn't feel as cohesive as maybe it used to. But again, I'm not following it super closely, so it's hard for me to say that definitively. But the vibe I get is definitely that it's not what it used to be. And that's why, you can't, people are like, oh, they should bring back Need for Speed Underground. It's like, yeah, okay, well, whatever, old man. Like even I gotta call you fucking weird and old at that point. But like, because that was a time and a place that just doesn't exist in the same way. That said, you can put underglow lighting on these cars and do all that dumb shit in the new Need for Speed. So like, they are kind of, like waving to that stuff a little bit. I just think if they just put the Snoop Dogg fucking Fred Wreck, Doors fucking Riders on the Storm song into a modern Need for Speed game, then you'd have some shit. I don't know, man. But yeah, I think it's I think a lot of that stuff, there's less of a monoculture around everything anymore, right? So like, what is car culture? It probably means different things in different places. Like we talked about earlier, slang is very different and all this other shit. And so I think, it's very hard to have like an experience in a video game like this that everyone who plays it is going to go, yeah, they nailed it. They absolutely got it. And this is what cars are. Because like, what are cars now? Like, it's the question I've asked people working on driving games for a lot of years now is, what do you do to make a driving game once more and more? Because it seems like kids don't want cars the way they used to. It's not the case of like, oh, as soon as I turned 15 and a half, I got my learner's permit. As soon as I turned 16, I got my license and I was fucking gone. I was out doing stuff. I was out living life. Like, it just seems like kids don't want to necessarily, they're on the damn internet all the time, but they're on the damn internet all the time. And so there's not as much of like, I've got to drive over here. I've got to pay insurance so that I have a car to be able to do this at all times. Like all that sort of stuff. It just doesn't seem there's as much of a pull there to the youth to go out and get a license and go do all that sort of stuff. So, as we get closer and closer, as more and more self-driving cars end up on the road for better or worse, like, eventually some of that stuff's going to stop killing people and become like a relatively more normal. And, you'll have even fewer kids wanting cars, fetishizing cars, and caring about driving games. And so, like, what is the real demographic for a Need for Speed game? As the price of gas continues to be insane and the price of car insurance is pricey and everyone can just communicate online like they've been doing for years. Like the idea of just like, I got to drive over to somebody's house. What are you going to do? Hang out? Like, that's not, I don't know. It's just not as much of a pull as it used to be. And so, like, eventually that starts to impact the desirability of a driving game. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is for making that, because at some point you know, if the demographic, I would assume that the demographic for driving games is going to just slowly continue to age up as time goes on, assuming that kids don't suddenly get back into cars for some reason or whatever. And so at some point you do go like, oh, actually we're going to try to recapture the car culture of 2002 because that's the demographic buying this game. And so now we are making a new Need for Speed Underground, you know? It's weird. I don't know what I don't know what the right answer is there, but it just seems like that's something that's going to eventually slam into this genre really hard, and the genre will either survive and adapt or it will not. And I don't know. Let's see here. Last question here from Bob in Manchester. Like, is skateboarding cool? I know a lot of people skateboard. I know that there are a lot of professional skateboarders, and you see a lot of videos of people doing awesome fucking street shit. Like that, like the honestly, the thing that keeps me, one of the things that keeps me looking at TikTok is that it is very good at serving me up videos of people doing crazy shit on skateboards, and I love watching it. But like, what is skate culture in this? What is any culture in this day and age, right? I mean, like, what is, you know, like everyone is so spread out. We're coming off of this pandemic, or maybe back into it, depending on which numbers you're looking at, I guess. Like, what is going to bring people together in the real world to do stuff? It's concerts. Like, why are people getting together, or why are people not getting together? You know, the internet is a very powerful thing and has replaced a lot of those in-person meetups and all that sort of stuff. Is that healthy? Probably not. I don't know. Like, it's probably healthy until it isn't. It's probably like, oh, this is totally fine, and this is just a new way that people socialize and all of this sort of stuff. But then at some point, like, I don't know. At some point, that seems like it probably goes back around on itself and becomes sort of a bad thing, an isolating thing, all that sort of stuff. I don't know. That's a bigger problem. That's a bigger issue than we can solve here on this podcast this week. But we will sure talk about it every, like, once a month or so. I feel like. Bob in Manchester writes and says, the other morning, my 6-month-old son was sick and crying regardless of what I did to calm him. To get through this, I threw on your recent stream of you playing the Mister. When Mr. Do came on my screen, my son immediately stopped crying. He was completely silent for the entire time that it was on screen, only starting to cry again once the stream moved on to something else. My question is, firstly, what does this say about my son? Should I be happy or worried? And secondly, have you found anything strange has calmed your kids down when they've been upset? Does Mr. Do work on them? I don't know. I don't know that I've tried. I don't know that I've introduced Mr. Do into the home just yet. I'd be curious, because I remember Mr. Do being significantly louder than a lot of the other games, and I wonder if, because I had to turn it down, and I wonder if the noise level was such that it startled him into submission. That might be a factor in that. I don't know, but if he immediately went back to screaming as soon as Mr. Do left the screen, then, well, I think your son has fine taste in video games, and I think you should cater to that as best you can, because Mr. Do, the big Mr. Do fan in the chat, even bigger than I am, and I like Mr. Do a lot, but I'm more of a Mr. Do's Castle kind of guy. But this Sebmal guy in the chat is like Mr. Do, as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, maybe he would know, but Fat Scout on the Discord says, you can't make video games about what the kids are into because video games are what the kids are into. That's actually a good point. But yeah, it's probably that probably is a factor, isn't it? Yeah, that probably is what the kids are into. So Arcade Paradise, then, that's a video game about video games. That's how you do it, right? I don't know. Anyway, that's gonna do it for us here. We're gonna wrap it up. Marion33 says, I played a Mr. Do roller coaster game. It was pretty bad. Yep, Mr. Do's Wild Ride is not a good game. I'm not gonna go to bat for that. Or Do Run Run. There's a couple of rough, the later games there's Mr. Do, and there's Mr. Do's Castle, and there's the Mr. Do slot machine, and that's where it stops. All the other stuff is rough. And there's not that much other stuff. There's like Neo Mr. Do, which is not a great game. There's Mr. Do's Wild Ride and Do Run Run. And both of those games are rough. Rough games. Mr. Do fell in some hard times there for a little bit. But he was riding high. Mr. Do's Castle, maybe one of the greatest video games of all time. And with that, I'm gonna head out. Thanks, everyone. I'm even gonna hit the music if I can remember which button it is. Thanks, everyone. I should be back tomorrow to stream some video games. Again, that graphics card is supposed to show up tomorrow, but I can't very well put that in. Well, I don't know. I guess I have to stream from my phone, and we'll see when it shows up. I don't know when it's gonna show up, but we'll see how that's going to go. I'm going to go to the awards show on Thursday and see it in person for the very first time. And I'm excited about that. Though I started sending texts last night about like, hey, are you going to be at the show? And most of the people I texted were like, no, not making it this year. I'm like, oh, well, shit. Well, shit. And then, we'll be back on Friday to do some stuff as well. Maybe on Friday we'll take a look and see if Call of Duty runs at a full frame rate with a 4090 in the machine while streaming. We'll see you soon.